Chapter 863. Xiao Su stopped and looked at him coldly. Sun Kun didn't dare delay. He switched hands with the imperial edict and took out a letter. When he handed it over, he stole a glance at Xiao Su before saying, "Her Majesty the Empress said that if you are unwilling to accept the edict, this letter should be given to you. She said that of all virtues, filial piety is the most important. You will not refuse this letter." Xiao Su's cold gaze landed on the letter. She really understands Ben Wang. Sun Kun laughed hastily. When Chu Qingyan returned to the Fu, she clearly felt that the atmosphere in the Fu was a bit off. Before she could ask anyone, a group of people she had never seen before walked in front of her. She couldn't help but stop in her tracks. The people in front of her also saw her and imperceptibly sized her up. This group of people was none other than Sun Kun and his guards, who had just retreated from the reception hall. When they arrived in front of her, Sun Kun cupped his hands and bowed to Chu Qingyan, saying, "This must be the famous Chu Qingyan, young Master Chu." Chu Qingyan was surprised. Who was this person? He was dressed in an official's uniform. Could it be that he was an official by official Lin's side? This insignificant one is indeed this one. May I ask who Sir is? It was impolite not to reciprocate, so she also asked politely. Sun Kun nodded slightly and introduced himself. "This one is the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of War, Sun Kun." Assistant Minister of the Ministry of War? Why was he here? Without waiting for Chu Qingyan to speak, Sun Kun said meaningfully, "When I was in the capital, I heard that there was a young talent by His Highness' side. Now that I have seen him, he is indeed a talent. The court needs talents right now. If you follow His Highness, your future will definitely be limitless." Sir is right. Although she was confused, Chu Qingyan still agreed with a smile. Coincidentally, a servant came up to lead the way. Only then did Chu Qingyan and Sun Kun part ways. However, Sun Kun's words before he left made Chu Qingyan have some guesses. "Since young Master Chu has been by His Highness' side for so many years, I'm sure His Highness will listen to some of your words. I hope that young Master Chu can persuade His Highness to put the big picture above all else. Only then will his future be bright and prosperous." As Chu Qingyan walked and pondered over these words, another person walked in front of her. It was Huo Ling who was looking for her. "Huo Ling, did something happen?" Chu Qingyan didn't wait for him to speak and asked first. When Huo Ling saw her, he first let out a sigh of relief. Then he concisely told her what happened today. At the end of his words, he angrily said, "In the past, when there was nothing going on, she couldn't wait to cast Master aside. Now that something has happened, she shamelessly asked Master to come out and solve it. How can there be such a good thing?" Chu Qingyan immediately glared at him. "Be careful, the walls have ears. How could the Emperor of the 9 and 5 be so casually arranged?" Huo Ling knew that he had misspoken and immediately shut up, but his face was still gloomy. At this time, Chu Qingyan's heart was also in a mess. For this matter to appear at this time, it really made people feel vexed. Where is His Highness right now? After official Sun left, Master went back to his study and hasn't taken a single step out. Huo Ling gave a soft sigh. "All right, I'll go take a look now." Chu Qingyan left these words and quickly headed to the study. Huo Ling looked at the little princess back and gave another sigh. He came out to find the little princess in hopes that at this time, there would be someone to accompany Master. Master's heart shouldn't be feeling good right now. Chu Qingyan quickly walked to the door of the study. When she raised her hand to knock on the door, she paused. She had been in a hurry the entire way because she wanted to see the big ice cube as soon as possible, but she was just one step away. She didn't know how to comfort him when she saw him later. To be summoned by someone like this and sent away by her own father, this feeling, no matter how big of a person's heart was, they wouldn't be able to endure it. While she was hesitating, a faint voice came from inside the door. "What are you standing there for?" She had been discovered. She bit her lip and pushed open the door. When she stepped in, there was already a smile on her face. How did you know it was me? Your ears are so sharp. She turned to close the door and walked towards him with a grin. At this time, other than you, no one else dares to come in. Xiaosu stood in front of the window with his hands behind his back as his eyes fell onto the distant sky. When Chu Qingyan passed by the table, she saw the letter that Huoling mentioned. Her eyes didn't stay on it as she walked behind him. Then she reached out and hugged him from behind when he wasn't expecting it. She pressed her face against his back and spoke in a grumbling and mischievous tone. Who told you to be so cold normally? No one dares to breathe loudly in front of you. Xiaosu gave a soft laugh. Isn't there an exception? She knew that he was hinting at her. She waved her hands in a clingy manner. How is that the same? They're afraid of you, but I'm not afraid of you. I'm different from the others. That's right, you're different from the others. He repeated her words, but it was unknown if it was a response to her words or if there was some other meaning to it. Big Ice Cube, is there something you're unhappy about? Tell me and I'll be happy. Her tone was cheerful, but behind Xiaosu's back, her eyes were filled with sorrow and pain. Xiaosu did not punish her like he usually did. His tone was still calm as he said, don't you already know? Chu Qingyan tightly hugged his back and said in a gentle voice, that's not the same. What others say is different from what you say. If you keep it in your heart, it won't feel good and you'll get sick from holding it in. The two of them were silent for a while before Xiaosu slowly opened his mouth. Just now, Sun Kun brought news from the front lines. 4th Imperial Brothers' army has been defeated and the city has lost a lot. If this continues, the Southern Sung army will soon reach the city. These days, Shaolai cavalry had been preparing for his and the little fellow's marriage. He did not pay much attention to the reports from the front lines, so he did not send any information to Jiangnan. If it wasn't for Sun Kun's visit, he would not have known that the situation was this serious. So he came here to pass on His Majesty's imperial edict, to have you take Xiao Ran's place and quell the war. Chu Qingyan had already guessed it from Huoling's words. I don't know. As soon as Xiaosu spoke, she was stunned on the spot. What? Xiaosu turned around and allowed her to wrap her arms around his shoulders. His brows slightly raised, because I didn't accept the imperial edict. Why did this person look so normal? He wasn't as gloomy and sad as she imagined. But these words shocked her even more. Is this really okay? 9 generations of your family will be implicated. Xiaosu gently pulled her into his embrace, his tone was unfathomably calm. That imperial edict, even if I don't look at it, I can still guess what the contents are. Once I open it, I'm afraid there are many things that I can't do. Then what can we do? She was a little absent-minded. Ian, do you want me to accept the imperial edict? Do you want to hear the truth? She buried her head in his chest. Her answer was self-evident. She knew that in front of the world, she might be too selfish. That's why I had Sun Kun bring a message to Imperial Father, saying that Xiaosu no longer exists in this world. Xiaosu lightly said. Ah, Chu Qingyan was completely stunned. Chapter 864. Can I assume that you made this decision because of me? After the shock, she raised her head, her eyes still filled with shock. She thought for a bit and asked hesitantly. Xiaosu stared at her eyes, clear as a stream, always able to make the darkness in people's hearts unable to hide. It was this pair of large eyes that gave him an endless stream of energy whenever he was at a loss in his heart. Half. He replied honestly. Although it was only half, she was still very happy. Then what about the other half? Our wedding day is near. Xiaosu lovingly stroked her head. So Big Ice Cube was because of this. So half plus half, the whole thing was because of her. Her heart was suddenly filled with warmth. She raised her eyebrows and pretended to be charming as she smiled. Then can I be said to be a femme fatale? Sichuan's god of war would rather have a beauty than the common people. Tell me, when the time comes, will I drown in the spit of the world? Xiaosu was amused by her mischievous words. Then his hand followed her hair and caressed her face as he leisurely said, "Then in order to win a beauty's smile, I will kill everyone in the world. With your words, I think it's worth it." She took a deep breath and said to him brightly. She quietly leaned into his embrace, neither of them saying a word. Just like that, they bathed in the sunlight that shone in from outside the window. The two of them snuggled together and their shadows were elongated on the tiles. Suddenly, she pointed at their shadows and smiled. "I remember hearing a similar saying before. It's not that there's no darkness in this world, but that there's someone who helps you block the darkness behind you. I feel that these words are somewhat reasonable. What do you want to say?" Xiaosu keenly sensed that there was a hidden meaning in her words, so he lazily asked. Chu Qingyan smiled. "Big ice cube, I saw a letter on the table just now. It's from your mother, right?" Her ability to change the topic was really stiff, but he didn't care. "You haven't read it yet? You don't plan to?" she continued to ask. Xiaosu followed her gaze and saw the letter lying there quietly. He was silent for a while. Yes. It was unknown whether he was answering the first question or the second one. Chu Qingyan pondered for a moment, then left his embrace. She pushed him with a smile. "Go take a look. Maybe your mother has something important to tell you." What could be so important? It was just a matter of going to war. His gaze darkened and he lowered his head to look at her. "You want me to go and see it? Will the letter disappear even if you don't read it?" She tilted her head and smiled at him. "And I know that there are many things that we can't change. Aren't you afraid that I'll abandon you and go to the battlefield after seeing it?" He tried to scare her. She crossed her arms and raised her chin confidently. "What are you afraid of? Your heart is mine. You'll be mine no matter where you go. You're so confident." He pinched her face. She slid down, nimbly avoiding his mischievous hand on her face. Laughing, she ran to the desk, reached out, and came back with a whoosh. She handed the letter to him. "Here, I brought it for you." He frowned slightly. Before he could speak, she had already placed the letter in his hands. "Take a look. Don't be so lazy. Open it yourself." Xiaosu's gaze fell on her calm smile. His eyes moved, and he finally lowered his head and began to open the seal. Very quickly, he took out the letter inside. Chu Qingyan felt that when the big ice cube took out the letter, he paused for a moment. She didn't know if it was just her imagination. Actually, she was also very curious about what was written in the letter that it would appear at such a crucial moment. Xiaosu opened the letter and glanced at it. His gaze darkened. She stood in front of him, and the relaxed expression she had shown was just a pretense. She had been paying close attention to the changes in his expression. Now that she saw his horrified expression, her heart was shocked. Could it be that there was something scary written in the letter? It made the big ice cube, who wouldn't change his expression even if the sky collapsed, reveal his emotions. When he folded the letter, he met the little fellow's nervous eyes. His gloomy heart couldn't help but relax a lot. He deliberately said, "Weren't you not afraid at all? Don't tease me. Let me see the letter." She couldn't take any jokes right now. She wasn't afraid of the big ice cube going to the battlefield, but that Empress Liang would use something to threaten him. Even though she hadn't met her future mother-in-law many times, she understood her very well. She always knew that Empress Liang didn't like her existence and wanted to kill her many times. If she hadn't safely passed each time, she would probably be playing chess with the King of Hell right now. And she had ignored the big ice cube's wishes many times to make things difficult for him. It could be imagined that this letter wasn't anything good. Xiaosu didn't tease her anymore and handed the letter to her. "Don't be scared." With this warning, Chu Qingyan unconsciously swallowed. She reached out to take the letter as if it was 3 feet of white silk. She took a deep breath and then opened the letter. She solemnly read it. But even if she had prepared herself, it couldn't compare to the shock of what was written on the letter. Your Empress Mother. She suddenly closed the letter and raised her head to look at the person in front of her. She didn't know what to say. Xiao Su gave a self-deprecating smile. Now you know what she's capable of. This is why I don't read it. Just reading it once makes my heart feel suffocated. Chu Qingyan couldn't resist throwing herself at him. Big Ice Cube, my heart aches for you. There were only a few words written on the letter, but each word was like a needle stabbing into a person's heart. The general meaning was that this campaign was a chance for him to regroup and return to the capital. If he didn't grasp it, he wouldn't have a place in Sichuan in the future. When Xiao Ran was made the crown prince, the Liang family would be suppressed. The things she had worked hard for her entire life would be wasted. Also, she was the empress. If her son couldn't become the crown prince, she would be ridiculed by the world. Since he knew the result, it was better to end himself early and avoid this foul air. So was this using death to force him? He had already guessed what was written in the letter, but he only opened it to satisfy the little fellow. Sure enough, it was as he expected. But when he saw the little fellow's shocked expression, he couldn't bear it and reached out to hug her back when she threw herself at him. It's fine. I'm already used to it. It would have been better if he didn't say this. Once he said this, Chu Qingyan's heart was fiercely wrenched, as if it hurt more than if she was injured. When else? Her throat was tight and her voice was choked. He knew that he shouldn't have said that. He sighed, when we left Shang country. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips. Big Ice Cube, you're so pitiful. Xiao Su smiled. What's there to be pitiful about? Last time she said this, wasn't she still in charge of her harem? Chu Qingyan nodded, but she was still worried inside. As the saying went, of all virtues, filial piety was the most important. Empress Liang's actions were actually trapping Big Ice Cube for being unfaithful, unrighteous, and unfilial. This move was truly too terrifying. Chapter 865. Big Ice Cube, what do you plan to do? Empress Liang's letter was so straightforward and full of threats. Chu Qingyan frowned, her eyes filled with deep worry. She couldn't help but sigh. Empress Liang's desire for control was too strong. She wasn't worried about the current situation, but about the future. If Empress Liang's thoughts were still on seizing power, then she couldn't imagine whether she would forcefully interfere in her life in the future. The answer might be yes. Xiao Su thought that she was worried about his decision. He rubbed her head and said with a smile, "Didn't I already tell you the answer? I'll make Xiao Su completely disappear from this world. Didn't you want to go out for a walk? Soon, I can take off my mask, take off this identity, and be a pair of lovers with you." He was clearly talking about the longing she told him in the tea house a while ago. She should be happy that her wish was fulfilled, but she felt even more sad and distressed. Giving up her identity was denying her past. This feeling was very uncomfortable. Big Ice Cube, go and receive the decree. She suddenly looked up and fixed her gaze on him. Her gentle gaze burst with a resolute light. He stared blankly. When a person is born, there are a few things that they can't decide. Two of them are their parents and their background. Even if the identity of Xiao Su disappears, your parents still exist. The memories of your past identity are still in your mind. Big Ice Cube, those things are engraved in your body and soul. It's something that we can't escape from. Quelling the war. In today's world, who else but you can do it? You're the god of war that everyone trusts. That proves that other than you, no one else can save the common people from the fire and water. Not only do I need you, the common people caught in the flames of war also need you. I really want to be selfish, but I can't be selfish. I don't want to be your stumbling block. Her voice recovered from its hoarseness to its clarity. There are some things that we don't want, but we can't tolerate others taking them away and then clamoring. Let's go take back what belongs to us. Whether it is military power, honor, or hot-blooded myself. The thick black color in Xiao Su's eyes slowly dissipated as she spoke each and every word, from thick to light, from black to clear. can you bear to part with me? He already had an answer in his heart. He buried his head in her shoulder and smelled her fragrance, as if he could gain strength by doing so. Chu Qingyan sniffed and said frankly, I don't want to, but I have no choice. The emperor has already given the order, I cannot disregard your life and frame you for disloyalty. In the past few years, you have always been conscientious in serving the people. I cannot let your efforts in the first half of your life go to waste and frame you for disloyalty. Some things are better safe than sorry. You only have one mother, I cannot let you be unfilial. I don't care about your reputation, because everything you have is mine. Why would I despise myself? But I can't let you bear the infamy of being disloyal, unrighteous, and unfilial. You don't care, but I care. So. She blinked away the tears in her eyes, but her eyes became even brighter. Xiao Su felt that those eyes were even more dazzling than the scorching sun on the horizon. I bet on the marriage contract. When you return in triumph, give me a grand wedding. At that time, I will be awe-inspiring. You are the hero of the Sichuan, then I will be the hero's wife. That is something that others can only envy. In any case, I have already decided on you, so no one can snatch you away, right? He knew that she said so much because she did not want him to feel guilty. You don't want me to betray the emperor, you don't want me to betray the world, and you don't want me to betray my parents, but in the end, I betray you. This little fellow had always been righteous. He did not want to see her like this. Ian, if only you weren't so sensible. Xiao Su sighed softly. She put her hands behind her back and pouted, isn't it good to be sensible? This will save you a lot of trouble. I'd rather you have trouble. He looked at her and his tone became much more serious. When did you make this decision? Chu Qingyan blinked, when I heard Huo Ling say that someone came from the capital. He was stunned and then the coldness in his eyes softened. So it was this early. He thought it was after she saw the contents of the letter. Strike while the iron is hot and go find official Sun. I think he will be overjoyed later. She urged him. She was holding on with her anger, afraid that she would not be able to hold back and regret it later. Xiao Su turned to look at the setting sun outside. The expression in his eyes kept changing. Finally, when the dust settled, he took her hand and calmly said, let's go. All right, I'll go with you to receive the decree. She felt the strength in his fingers and tried her best to smile. In the living room. Sun Kun had been restless in the room earlier. When he received Xiao Su's orders, his heart was in a mess. He did not know why this prince who did not play by the rules was looking for him. But there was a faint expectation in his heart. He anxiously walked over until he reached the living room. He saw two people sitting on the left and right of the main seats. One was His Highness and the other was Chu Qingyan, who he had met once in the courtyard. He was originally surprised that Chu Qingyan was sitting on the same level as His Highness. He was about to call out when he heard His Highness speak. Did you bring the imperial decree? Xiao Su looked at him with an indifferent expression. Imperial decree. I brought it. This subject always carries it with him. Hearing this, Sun Kun forgot what he wanted to say and replied in a pleasantly surprised voice. All right, read it. When Xiao Su's words fell, the two of them stood up and walked to the center of the living room. Sun Kun had not come back to his senses at all as he stared at the two people in front of him with his mouth wide open. It was only when Xiao Su impatiently frowned at him that he came back to his senses. His fingers trembled as he took out the imperial decree and slowly opened it. Xiao Su lifted his clothes and kneeled down. To the side, Chu Qingyan also followed suit and knelt down. By the will of the heavens, the emperor summons. Southern Blue has invaded, burning, killing, plundering, and committing all kinds of crimes. Cities have been lost and the people have lost their homes. In the face of national calamity, everyone has a responsibility. Xiao Su has quelled many wars and is brave and skilled in battle. With rich experience, he is worthy of the title of great general who pacifies the south. You will be in charge of the three armies. You will head to the battlefield today and recover lost territory. You will strike the enemy head-on and annihilate them all. This is the imperial decree. Although Sun Quan tried his best to suppress the wild joy in his heart, the raised tone of his voice still revealed his thoughts. General who pacifies the south, please receive the imperial decree. Sun Quan said very respectfully. Xiao Su reached out to receive the imperial decree. I receive the imperial decree. Chu Qingyan stood up with him. Looking at the imperial decree in his hand, she felt that the bright yellow was a bit dazzling. At this time, Sun Quan took the battle robe from the imperial bodyguard behind him and held it in front of Xiao Su. This silver moon battle robe has finally returned to its rightful owner. Xiao Su glanced at Chu Qingyan. Chu Qingyan very consciously stepped forward to receive the sparkling silver battle robe. What a dazzling appearance! Your Highness, I will leave the safety of the country to you. This humble subject dares to ask, when will you depart to the front lines to meet with the three armies? Sun Quan couldn't hide his joy as he asked. We'll discuss it later. Xiao Su replied indifferently. Then, he waved his hand to have someone send him out. Sun Quan knew that it wasn't easy to get him to accept the imperial decree, so he didn't care about these small matters. However, while he was happy, he was still a bit puzzled. Why did His Highness change his mind in just a few hours? Was it because of that letter, or because, the young man standing beside him? Chu Qingyan felt his gaze on her and smiled back at him. Sun Quan hurriedly bowed and left. Chapter 866. Those who were familiar with Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan's identities rushed over after Sun Quan left. The most dissatisfied was Cheng Yenluo. Why did the entire world change after I went back to take a nap? What is that old emperor trying to do? What are those ministers doing? They only know how to shout when there's nothing to do. Are they just eating the imperial rations and not doing anything? Go fight your own battles. Why are you pulling our people? Ethereal quickly pulled her back. Don't talk so much. Be careful that the walls have ears. Cheng Yenluo shook off his hand, but she still listened to him and remained silent in a fit of pique. The most worried was Chu Mu's mother. On this battlefield, swords have no eyes. Moreover, I've heard that the southern blue people are incomparably savage. Your Highness must be extremely careful. Chu Mu's father muttered, what is there to worry about? What is the southern blue army? They're not even enough for Xiao Hai to chew on. I believe that he'll be able to catch them all in one fell swoop. Old Master Chu, it's not that we want to belittle ourselves, but the southern blue army's leader is the current crown prince. We've fought with him before and he's really cunning. Huo Ling said matter-of-factly. Isn't it just a housefly crown prince? Chu Mu's father muttered. When these words came out, everyone was silent for a while before they understood. They couldn't help but laugh, and the tense atmosphere eased a lot. Huo Ling sighed, this master and the young princess's marriage has already been decided. He really didn't come earlier or later, he just had to come at this time. Turin frowned and glared at him, even if you don't speak, no one will think you're mute. Everyone avoided this topic, but this guy actually stupidly came out himself. Huo Ling knew that he had said something wrong, but although his voice wasn't loud, it had entered everyone's ears. A gloomy atmosphere spread among the crowd. Huo Ling looked at the young princess with some self-blame. No matter what, the cancellation of the marriage was his master's fault. He shouldn't have said it so bluntly. Chu Qingyan swept her gaze over the crowd. She knew that they were feeling regretful and unwilling to come at such an unfortunate time. She sighed softly in her heart. However, it was better for her to take the initiative to deal with these matters. Mother, the marriage between His Highness and I will be discussed after the war is quelled. In that case, we won't be returning to Lian City. Let's put aside the things we prepared for the marriage first. Chu Machen's mother thought about it and agreed. Xiaohuan, the two of you return the luggage that you've prepared for the journey to its original place. Then, instruct the servants to perform their duties and cancel the trip to Lian City. Xining, Lord Sun is staying in the residence. Personally bring a few servants over and let them serve him well. Instruct the kitchen to prepare good wine and dishes for Lord Sun. Even the guards by his side cannot be lacking. Xining and Xiao Huan accepted the order and left to carry it out. Chu Qingyan issued several orders in a row. It could be said that she was clear and decisive. Soon, everything was arranged. Chu Machen's mother was very gratified that her daughter was so rational that she wasn't defeated by this sudden blow. Thus, she pulled Chu Machen's father away so as not to cause trouble for the young couple. Although Qing Yenlua was angry, she also knew that it was useless to throw a tantrum in front of such a major issue. Thus, under the pull of ethereal, she also left unwillingly. Turan, Jinling, Hualing, and the others were also discerning people. After the crowd left, they also found an excuse to leave. Not long after, only Shi and Xiao Su were left in the empty waiting room. From the beginning until now, she hadn't heard Big Ice Cube speak much. Chu Qingyan thought that the meaning behind the imperial edict and the ruthlessness of the emperor had been incisively and vividly expressed. She really didn't know how to open her mouth to comfort him. There were many things that couldn't be alleviated by comforting him. There were more things that needed time to heal. Big Ice Cube, what are you thinking about? She was silent for a while and asked seriously. Xiao Su came back to his senses and looked at her, his eyes full of guilt. Ayan, it's been hard on you. In fact, after today's incident, she had the right to be angry and even ask him to resist the imperial edict. However, she didn't say anything and didn't complain. From the study to here, if it weren't for her gentle counsel and a series of follow-up actions, the residents would probably be in a mess now. Grandfather Emperor had been unreliable for so many years, but in the end, he did something right for him. And that was to arrange a rare wife for him. Big Ice Cube, the wedding is just a formality. You don't have to feel that you owe me anything. Being together is more important than anything else. She thought that he was thinking about this and comforted him seriously. Xiao Su looked at her deeply. I know that there's no need to care about those worldly things, but I still want to give you a grand wedding. Not caring about it was one thing, but he wanted to openly announce to the world that this woman was the partner that he, Xiao Su, would cherish for the rest of his life. Chu Qingyan's face became shy. Big Ice Cube clearly didn't like to eat sweet things, so why did it feel like he was getting better at sweet words? Then will you properly protect yourself when I'm not here? Don't let others steal you away. When he was here, there were people trying to steal him away. Perhaps when he wasn't here, she would attract more peach blossoms for him. At that time, he would have to send more people to watch over her. What are you saying? I'm not that kind of woman who changes her mind. You don't trust my character at all. She pretended to be angry and reached out to grab his neck to show her dissatisfaction. But she suddenly felt that something wasn't right. Wait, of course I'm going with you. I didn't say that I would stay and wait for you. Chu Qingyan finally realized that she had missed something, so she quickly clarified. You're not allowed. He didn't even think about it before denying her words. What? He didn't want her to go with him. Chu Qingyan was stunned. She couldn't help but repeatedly confirm, you mean you're going to the battlefield by yourself and not bringing me along? Your mother is right. Swords have no eyes on the battlefield. If you're not careful, your life will be at stake. You'd better stay in Jiangnan and wait for me to come back. Xiao Su sensed her thoughts and said righteously. His tone was rarely serious and didn't allow her to back down. You're so heartless as to leave me alone. War isn't something that can be done in a day. It might take half a year, or even 2 years. Can you bear not seeing me for so long? Chu Qingyan complained angrily. Hearing the little fellow's words, Xiao Su's heart couldn't bear it, but he couldn't joke about her safety. He reached out and stroked her head, trying his best to keep his voice steady and not reveal any of his reluctance. Be good and stay at home. I'll end the war as soon as possible. He then added, come back safely. She didn't want to listen to him. That wasn't her original plan. Otherwise, why would she agree to go to the battlefield? She only agreed because she wanted to go with him. Chapter 867. I'm not Wolf, don't keep patting my head. Listen carefully, I don't want to stay at home obediently. But before Chu Qingyan could finish protesting, Xiao Su had already patted her head and put an end to this matter. It's settled then. Chu Qingyan stomped her feet and stared at his back as he left. She angrily waved her hand in the air. Too much, always insisting on doing things his own way without asking for my opinion. She muttered to herself and felt endless sadness. How can I be assured to let you go alone? She pursed her lips and her expression was cold. Her previous urgency was swept away and she calmed down. It's not that easy to leave me behind. After Xiao Su left, he gathered Hualing, Turan, and the others and locked them in the study for the entire night. When the door opened and everyone came out, the moon was already high in the sky. Looking at the courtyard that was particularly cold and cheerless, Xiao Su couldn't help but ask the servant guarding the side, "Where's the princess consort?" After the young princess consort had dinner, she went to Your Highness' room to pack her luggage with the servants. The servant immediately replied. When Xiao Su heard this, he let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the little fellow didn't continue to argue with him about going to the battlefield. Jin Ling, who hadn't left yet, looked at his master with some hesitation. They also knew about what happened in the guest room today and couldn't help but ask, "Master, do you really intend to let the young princess consort stay in Jiangnan? When marching to war, we can't bring women along. And you also know that this time, it bodes ill rather than well." What they were discussing tonight was about the battle at the front line. Those delayed battle reports were placed in front of him one by one. Only then did he know that this time the battle had already reached this degree of severity and couldn't be delayed. This subordinate understands. Hualing wanted to say something more, but was stopped by Turan's gaze. He thought that it was useless to say more, so he immediately went to handle the matter. Turan said after Hualing left. "Master, don't worry. This subordinate will send more people to protect the little princess consort. I won't let anyone have any ideas about her." Previously, when the young princess consort was by his master's side, she did not attract much attention. After all, his master had retired to Liancheng. Now that his master had regained control of the three armies, some people with active thoughts would probably have their eyes on the young princess consort. Therefore, it was necessary to be prepared. Yes, we can't let the princess consort out of Xiao Lai's sight. We have to pay special attention to the Liang family and the Fu family. Xiao Su instructed. He didn't want his backyard to catch fire while he was charging to the front line. In the past, he had looked down on men who were short-tempered in love. Now that he had experienced it himself, he finally understood what it was like. Love was a poison. It was addictive and would produce emotions that had never been experienced before. It was just that it was not known to outsiders. Turan knew that his master was afraid that the empress would take the opportunity to capture the young princess to threaten him, or get rid of the young princess to stop his master's thoughts. The Fu family was probably thinking of the former. After he agreed, he hurriedly left. His master was going to leave tomorrow. Time was tight. He had to make good use of the time to make arrangements. After his subordinates left, Xiao Su slowly walked towards his own courtyard. He had lived in Jiangnan for almost half a year. Although it was not as long as he had lived in Liancheng, he could not be more familiar with every tree and flower in this manner. What thoughts did he have in the beginning to decorate this garden? Now, as he looked at the garden full of spring, his lips curled up and revealed a trace of nostalgia. He didn't know when he would come back next time. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but smile. He must have been infected by the little fellow. In the past, when he was wandering around, he didn't have this kind of reluctance. Back then, the mansion of the King of England in the capital, the mansion of the Prince of Liancheng, and now the mansion of Jiangnan. It must be the existence of the little fellow that gave him one home after another, so he became sentimental. He laughed softly. Apart from being emotional, there was also a trace of melancholy. Forget it. He would go and see the little fellow. Because time was tight, when he left in the afternoon, he saw the 2 streams of tears in her eyes and didn't have time to comfort her. But more than that, he was afraid that when he saw her tears, he couldn't help but be soft-hearted and agree to go with her. When he returned to the courtyard, it was brightly lit. There were a few servants walking back and forth in his room. The window reflected the shadow of the little fellow instructing the servants to tidy up. He stood outside the door and watched for a while before going up the stairs. Chu Qingyan was still thinking about what was missing when she saw the black figure slowly walking in from the corner of her eye. Her eyes flashed. She was about to throw herself at him, but then she remembered his indifference in the afternoon. She stopped in her tracks and pretended not to see him. She continued to instruct the servants to tidy up. As soon as he came in, his eyes fell on her. How could her little movements escape his eyes? He chuckled in his heart and calmly walked to her side. Going to war, not to play. You don't have to bring so many things. Otherwise, it will be a burden on the battlefield. Xiao Su looked at the large and small bundles on the table and said in surprise. They couldn't be counted with 10 fingers. Chu Qingyan thought about it and agreed. She was really confused because she was too concerned. She ordered the servants to open the bundles again and pick out some necessities to bring. The servants also had good eyesight. The master of the house was going to travel in the next few days and didn't have much time to stay with the mistress. So after they finished tidying up, they immediately retreated and left the room for the couple. I'm almost done. You should rest well for the next few days. I'm also going back. Chu Qingyan treated him as heir and turned to leave. She didn't even look at him. When she passed by him, her wrist was suddenly grabbed. She couldn't help but stop and slightly pursed her lips. I'm leaving early tomorrow morning. This was the decision he made after reading the battle report in the afternoon. Since he decided to leave, he couldn't delay it any longer. Chu Qingyan snorted, You're not bringing me. What's the use of telling me this? Xiao Su smiled. He didn't care about her anger and continued. Your birthday is in 5 days. I can't spend it with you. I know. She said a little impatiently. He thought she would be disappointed, but he didn't expect her to be so open-minded and not complain at all. He felt even more guilty, but he didn't show it on his face. He took a step and stood in front of her. His eyes were overflowing with warmth. I can only give you the present for your coming of age in advance. As he said this, he was about to enter the room, as if to take the present. Chu Qingyan suddenly grabbed his sleeve. I don't want to receive the present in advance. Then, he thought about it and decided to give it to Mother Chu. When the time came, he could pass it to her. But the person in front of him didn't let him finish his words and interrupted, I only want to receive the present from you personally. Xiao Su frowned. Then he could only give it to her after the war. Chu Qingyan snorted in her heart. Don't worry, I will personally receive the present from you on that day. Chapter 868. Perhaps it was because they were about to part, Xiao Su wanted to spend more time with her, so he held her hand and strolled around the courtyard. It was already summer, and the weather was a little stuffy. In addition, there were many things that had yet to be resolved, so Xiao Su's heart was filled with deep melancholy. And the companionship of the person beside him was like a cool breeze, brushing away the anxiety in his heart. Standing under the pear tree, he turned around and hugged her. Little fellow, don't you have anything you want to say to me tonight? Along the way, the little fellow was so quiet that he was not used to it. Chu Qingyan was thinking about some things in her heart, but when she heard his sudden words, she was stunned at first, then she pouted unhappily. What I wanted to say, you didn't agree, so I won't ask for a rebuff. Xiao Su knew that she was still thinking about the matter of following the army, and sighed lightly. Following the army is not as fun as you think, there are many things that I don't want you to experience. Initially, he had the intention of grooming her, wanting her to have a pair of strong and powerful wings, so that he would not have to worry about her. Now that she really had the ability, he was selfish and did not want her to experience those bloody, dirty, and chaotic things. In the end, time would change people's thoughts, just like at this moment, he only wanted her to live peacefully and happily. If you don't want me to go with you, then don't talk to me. She did not intend to pay attention to him, and her hands struggled in front of his chest, wanting to push him away. Unfortunately, she did not know if it was because she did not use all her strength, or because there was a great disparity in strength, but in the end, she could only be held in his arms. Xiao Su curved his lips. I'm leaving tomorrow, do you really want to treat me like this? Chu Qingyan was slightly stunned. In that laughter, there was an imperceptible expectation, but she was sharp enough to sense it. Then, she pursed her lips, and no longer resisted, her hands went through his arms and hugged his waist. Her body had compromised, but her words were still stubborn. You don't miss me at all, it must be that you don't like me anymore, you have a change of heart, you big playboy. Xiao Su was stunned at first. After digesting her words, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Just because he didn't take her to the battlefield, it rose to such a serious crusade. Women's thoughts were really hard to guess. Just as he was secretly laughing, the person in front of him was still rambling on about his crimes. You've gone too far. I tried so hard to persuade you not to disobey the imperial edict, but you just abandoned me here after crossing the river. His voice suddenly stopped. Xiao Su lowered his head and sucked on her chattering little mouth. With a little force from the tip of his tongue, he pried open her teeth and did not give her any chance to react. Just like that, he swept through her entire territory forcefully and domineeringly. If he allowed her to continue like this, he would probably have to spend the night with her nagging. Although this was not bad, this was not what he wanted more. With her back against the pear tree, the coolness of the tree trunk passed through her thin clothes and into her skin. She opened her eyes slightly in sensitivity. At this time, a large hand replaced the pressing of the tree bark. Presumably, he was afraid that the roughness of the tree bark would rub against her back. It was just that the scorching temperature was like the difference between ice and fire just now. First, she passively endured his attack, and was slowly led into the boundless starry sky by him. Her feet were soft, and she couldn't help but lean against him. In the end, her whole body hung on his body and she began to respond to him. The sorrow of parting, the reluctance to part, at this moment, was out of control. Especially when he felt the little fellow's response, Xiao Su tightened his arms and even squeezed her into his embrace. Her appearance was deep, distant, and sincere, her skin was delicate, and her bones and flesh were even. Her face was like a hibiscus, and her eyebrows were like willows. The beauty was like a flower in the clouds. At this moment, he finally tasted the sorrow of parting. In the past, leaving home to fight was just a common occurrence. It seemed to have become a habit. Now that there was someone waiting for him at home, his heart had something to worry about. After the kiss, Chu Qingyan lay on his chest and tried to breathe. Tonight, the big ice cube felt like he was going to eat her up. So forceful, so. She was too embarrassed to continue thinking. Xiao Su quietly hugged her, enjoying the tranquility and peace at this moment. If it wasn't for his rationality winning out, perhaps he wouldn't have been able to restrain himself and would have done her tonight. It was unknown how much time had passed, but at this moment, Xining hurriedly ran over. Just as she was about to speak, she saw the two masters leaning against each other. She hurriedly covered her eyes and turned around, then reported loudly, "Master, young Master Hua is here. She's waiting in the living room." After saying that, she fled in defeat. Her master and His Highness were actually doing this in public. That's not right. His Highness was about to leave. This was him expressing his reluctance to part with her master under the moonlight. She had good eyesight, so she immediately disappeared. When Chu Qingyan heard that Hua Xiu was here, she immediately struggled out of his embrace. While tidying up her messy clothes, she said to him, "Big Ice Cube, you should rest early. I still have things to take care of, so I won't accompany you. I'm leaving." Xiao Su frowned. He didn't know why Hua Xiu was here so late at night. Before he could grab her, she had already finished speaking and left without any hesitation. Looking at her hurried figure, Xiaosu furrowed his brows in obvious jealousy, which was a rare sight. What could be more important than him leaving? He thought that the little fellow would accompany him tonight, but he didn't think that. He suddenly felt like a little wife who was left out. It seemed that the little fellow wouldn't be back so soon. He put his hands behind his back and coldly said, "Let Turin and Huoling come to the study." When Huoling and Turin received the news, they were both surprised. Shouldn't Master and the little princess be enjoying their time together tonight? When they arrived at the study, they saw Master's ashen face. Turin and Huoling looked at each other. So Master was abandoned by the little princess. They couldn't help but look at their master with sympathy. Xiaosu glanced at the two and saw through their thoughts. He chuckled, but in their ears, it was like a summons from hell. "Tonight, you two go find out the Southern Blue Army's battle tactics for this prince, as well as the information of their generals. This prince wants to know exactly how many wives, concubines, and children they have." Master was actually venting his anger from being left out by the little princess on them. Didn't they say that every injustice has its perpetrator and every debt its debtor? Turin and Huoling wailed in their hearts. So the ones who should be sympathizing with were themselves. The two silently mourned for themselves as they sat on the side and dealt with the matter. On the other side, Chu Qingyan had just stepped into the guest hall when she heard a sleepy and irritable voice. "Chu Qingyan, what can't you say tomorrow? You actually sent people to dig me out of bed. Tonight, I'll leave my words here. If you can't say that Wu Yin is ugly, I'll tear down this mansion of yours." No matter how big the world was, it was not as important as sleeping. Chu Qingyan knew that Hua Xiu had a bad temper when she woke up. Calling her over in the middle of the night was indeed a bit unkind, so she couldn't help but smile. Chapter 869. It's really a headache. Chu Qingyan shook her head and sighed as she walked. Hua Xiu, who was still yawning, immediately perked up when she heard that. The impatience on her face was instantly replaced by excitement. "What's bothering you? Tell me and make me happy." Cheng Yanluo, who was beside her, spat out the tea in her mouth. On the other hand, Lin Fengyi said calmly, "You have to be honest." Lin Fengyi must have heard about the imperial edict and reminded the people around him. Hua Xiu glared at him. "You're not interesting." "You'll know whether I'm interesting or not when we get back," Lin Fengyi replied leisurely. Hua Xiu recalled how he had treated her these past few days and blushed. This guy. Chu Qingyan didn't expect that there would be other people in the hall. She frowned imperceptibly, but her tone was very polite. "Lord Lin, are you looking for His Highness by visiting my humble abode tonight?" Lin Fengyi smiled. "No. He followed me here and said that he was worried about me walking alone at night. In any case, I have a car, so why would I, wait, what His Highness?" Hua Xiu raised her hands silently and confessed. Then, she quickly sensed that something was wrong and looked at Lin Fengyi suspiciously. Lin Fengyi didn't say anything and looked at Chu Qingyan meaningfully. Chu Qingyan received Hua Xiu's intense questioning and didn't ask why she was with Lin Fengyi in the middle of the night. She strolled to the main seat and turned to look at Hua Xiu with a smile. "Xiu, there's something I haven't told you. Now that the time is ripe, I'll introduce myself again. I'm Chu Qingyan, the King of England's imperial consort personally bestowed by the current retired emperor." Throughout the entire process, Hua Xiu's mouth was wide open and she maintained this posture for a while. If Lin Fengyi hadn't reached out to help her fix it for fear of dislocation, Chu Qingyan would have been worried that she would have to face this mouth of white teeth for the entire night. Hua Xiu rubbed her sore cheeks in her sleeves and looked at her with an indignant expression. "We've been business partners and friends for so long. You hid it from me so miserably. Don't think that I'll bow to you now." Chu Qingyan knew that she had accepted her identity. She shook her head and said with a smile, "When His Highness was sent to Fuli Mountain, many people were watching our every move, so we couldn't expose our whereabouts in Jiangnan. So, I didn't mean to hide it from you, I'm sorry. Hua Xiu was considered someone who had seen the world. She nodded and said reasonably, actually, I've been suspecting your identity before. You're either rich or noble. I guessed correctly. After all, only the children of aristocratic families or high-ranking officials would have such a noble and unruffled aura. After saying that, she suddenly thought of something and swept her sharp gaze over the three people beside her. Did the two of you already know? Was I the only one who was kept in the dark? Cheng Yenluo rolled her eyes at her. I came to Jiangnan with Qing Yan. What do you think? Hua Xiu immediately turned to Yang Xiaohuan. Yang Xiaohuan smiled shyly and said, I didn't know at first, but I found out after I followed Master. Hua Xiu looked at Lin Fengyi. Lin Fengyi rolled up his sleeves and said with a composed expression, I'm an important official transferred from the imperial court. What do you think? Hua Xiu was indignant. So I'm the one who made you happy. Everyone laughed. Chu Qingyan smiled and said, sorry, don't take it to heart. I'm just being honest with you. Stop it. Why didn't you say it earlier or later? Why did you have to dig me up to talk about this now? You must be up to something. Hua Xiu calmed down and quickly sensed that something was amiss. She snorted coldly and looked at her. She wasn't someone who could be fooled easily. Chu Qingyan shook her head inwardly. But at this moment, Yan Luo also cast a questioning look at her. She hesitated for a moment and turned to look at Lin Fengyi. Lin Fengyi leaned back in his chair even more leisurely. Miss Chu, you don't have to be so guarded against me. I swear on Hua Xiu's name that what I saw and heard tonight won't reach Xiao Su's ears. Chu Qingyan was stunned. Could it be that he had already guessed her intentions? However, Hua Xiu's attention wasn't on this. She grabbed Lin Fengyi's sleeve and said fiercely, why do you have to swear on my name? What nonsense are you spouting? I'm not giving you any guarantees. Who knows, she might be betrayed by you one day. Lin Fengyi didn't seem to care that she was grabbing his sleeve. Instead, he looked at her gently. Do we still need to distinguish between each other? Hua Xiu's face instantly reddened to her neck. Her fingers subconsciously loosened. This bastard, he was becoming more and more aware of how to make use of his appearance. Even his words were so. Chu Qingyan and Cheng Yenluo rubbed their arms and shook off the goosebumps all over their bodies. They didn't expect Lin Fengyi to be such an adult. Lin Fengyi looked at the silly girl's bashful expression with satisfaction. He reached out to straighten his clothes and then continued to lean back in his chair. He looked at Chu Qingyan leisurely, as if indicating that she could continue speaking. Chu Qingyan received Lin Fengyi's signal and fell silent for a moment. Although Lin Fengyi was the Ice Cube's best friend, he was an upright person and probably wouldn't reveal anything. Moreover, he had obviously guessed her thoughts. Even if she didn't say anything, he would know. If he wanted to tell on her, she couldn't stop him. Thinking about it, she didn't say anything else. Instead, she pondered how to tell Hua Xiu her plan. Hua Xiu glanced at the person beside her. Why was this person so thick-skinned today? Didn't he see that Qing Yan clearly didn't want him to know, yet he still followed her shamelessly? Normally, he would ignore Hua Xiu's complaints. However, the person who had misunderstood him was her. He didn't want to be misunderstood by her, so he thought for a moment and said, with me around, I think Miss Chu's next plan should be much smoother. Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up when she heard this. She also felt reassured. She replied, that's even better. What are you guys talking about? Hurry up and tell me the truth. Hua Xiuli, who was listening at the side, was confused. Only Cheng Yenluo seemed to have understood something. She looked at Chu Qingyan with a teasing and probing gaze. It's like this. The imperial edict came today. His Highness is to take over the marshal's position and go to the front lines to fight the enemy. I'm afraid that I won't be able to manage the continuation of the products and some of the newly opened shops for a while. Therefore, I would like to ask Hua Xiu and Yan Luo to look after the 4 major industries. If there are any problems, I hope you can help. Chu Qingyan didn't have any misgivings and directly said to everyone present. She had already asked Jin Xian and Su Yi to separate the Shao Lai cavalry in the guest hall. No one would hear this at this time. Hua Xiu stood up from the chair with a whoosh. What? You're going to the battlefield? Chapter 870. Why can't I? Chu Qingyan replied generously. To be honest, the battlefield is not suitable for a weak girl like you. Won't you be scared to death? Hua Xiu had never seen her fight and thought that she was braver than her. Xining smiled. Young Master Hua, my master is good at fighting. You don't have to worry. Ah. Hua Xiu circled around her in disbelief, her eyes full of disbelief. Other than Lin Fengyi's calm demeanor and Yang Xiaohuan's incredulity, Qing Yanluo was also taken aback. Guessing was one thing, but confirming it was another. She couldn't help but ask, are you planning to hide it from your husband? Chu Qingyan nodded and said solemnly, so I'll have to trouble you with the following matters. After saying that, she stretched out her hand and Xining immediately handed over the paper in her hand. Chu Qingyan opened the paper and divided it into 3 copies. One copy was given to Hua Xiu, one to Qing Yanluo, and the last one to Yang Xiaohuan. I've written everything down. I'll have to trouble you with the following matters. Qing Yanluo looked at the densely packed words in her hand and was more shocked than the others. She knew that the imperial edict had just been issued today. She couldn't help but admire Qingyan's speed for preparing everything so quickly. Although she still had some worries in her heart, she believed that the little girl was not a reckless person. Judging from what she had done so far, she knew that she had a foolproof plan before making the decision. Moreover, with the relationship between the little girl and Xiao Su, she couldn't persuade her even if she wanted to. She might as well let her go. Hua Xiu glanced at the paper in her hand and still had some doubts. You're leaving tomorrow. Why are you in such a hurry? Why didn't I know about the imperial edict? Do you know, Fengyi? Lin Fengyi smiled faintly. I received the news when you were taking your afternoon nap. Why didn't you tell me? She had embarrassed herself just now. If she had known earlier, she wouldn't have been so surprised by Qingyan's identity. Didn't you say that you wouldn't talk to me for the whole afternoon? Lin Fengyi was helpless against this silly girl who complained first. Hua Xiu knew that she was in the wrong and didn't harp on this issue. On the other hand, Chu Qingyan and Qing Yanluo were very surprised to hear the couple's public display of affection. Qing Yanluo's eyes widened as she looked at them. From what you're saying, is there going to be a good thing soon? Chu Qingyan was also amused as she looked at this perfect couple. It could be said that this was a typical example of a couple that had started out as a resentful couple that had turned into a perfect couple. What the hell are you talking about? Hua Xiu's face as red as a tomato. Chu Qingyan and Qing Yanluo, who were usually sharp-tongued, could only be mocked by the two of them. How could they let such a scene go so easily? Hua Xiu gritted her teeth and looked at Lin Fengyi, who was watching from the sidelines. She fiercely tugged at his sleeve and said, "It's all your fault. If you hadn't tricked me into drinking this afternoon, would I have stayed in your residence? I don't care. Explain to me." Lin Fengyi's lips curled up as he recalled her bashful expression after drinking. He said to her intimately, "Explaining is covering up. I think it's better if I don't say anything." Hua Xiu almost fell for his smile. She got even angrier. "You're just looking for an excuse." Lin Fengyi pretended to be helpless. "All right. You did drink a lot today, and then, there was a situation." A faint smile came from behind her. "And then what?" Hua Xiu stomped her feet. "This person didn't make it clear. And then you insisted on sleeping on my bed, so, oh." Behind her, there were a few wavy voices that deliberately dragged out their tones. "So what?" Hua Xiu made a final struggle. "I couldn't persuade you, so I could only bring you back." Lin Fengyi looked as if he had been taken advantage of and was very upset. "Oh, again, There were a few wavy voices that deliberately dragged out their tones. Don't think that I can't remember because I'm drunk. Who was the one who said that he had a good antique painting in his room? That's why I fell for your trick and went with you. In the end, he had to blame himself for not being able to control himself. She couldn't go on. She felt that she couldn't stay any longer. She got up from the chair with a whoosh. Water Spirit glared at him with her bright eyes and then fled. Lin Fengyi knew that it was best to stop at a certain point. If it weren't for the silly girl refusing to take him to see her father, he wouldn't have said these words at this moment. He understood that he couldn't push her too hard. He got up and nodded to the people in the hall before chasing after her. After Chu Qingyan and Cheng Yanluo finished watching the show, they clicked their tongues as if they hadn't had enough. Cheng Yanluo smiled and said, "Back then, I never thought that Lord Lin would be mine. That's why it's said that sometimes fate can't be stopped." Chu Qingyan rubbed her chin and said with a smile. After Yanluo also left, Chu Qingyan turned to face Xiao Huan and Xining, who stayed behind. "Xining, I'll leave my parents to you. Help me take good care of them when I'm not around." Xining didn't know her plan at first, but when she thought about how close her master and His Highness were, she knew that her master must be reluctant to part with them. So when her master asked her to go, she knew that her master would become His Highness's right-hand woman and she would only be a burden. So she could only nod tiredly. "Master, don't worry. Xining will definitely live up to your trust." Chu Qingyan nodded with gratification. Then she continued to say to Xiao Huan, "There are many things in the residence when I'm not around. Xining can't handle it all by herself sometimes. If you have time, help her a little." Young Xiao Huan's eyes were filled with tears. If it weren't for her master's trust and support, she would probably still be the quiet and timid young miss of the Yang family. Young Xiao Huan, who had the life of a servant, wouldn't be able to hold her head high like she was now, nor would she have the chance to try what she wanted to do. Everything she had was given to her by her master. She wouldn't hesitate to go through water and tread on fire for her master. "Master, don't say that. This is what Xiao Huan should do. The journey will be difficult and dangerous. Please take care of yourself." She choked with sobs. Chu Qingyan patted her shoulder. She was very glad that she had given her a chance. She had also given herself a chance. "Don't cry. It's as if I won't come back." Chu Qingyan teased. "Master, don't talk nonsense. Master, don't talk nonsense." The two of them immediately glared at her with teary eyes. Chu Qingyan didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she begged for mercy. Okay. Don't say such unlucky things. If you have time now, help me pack my luggage. I still have things to deal with." Xining and young Xiaohuan left reluctantly, as if she was going to turn into a butterfly and fly away. Chu Qingyan shook her head. Her heart was also filled with sorrow. But now wasn't the time to think about this. She put down these sorrowful feelings and prepared to go to her parents' courtyard. But she saw the person who was supposed to have left waiting outside the door. Lin Fengyi. Chapter 871. Chu Qingyan was taken aback by Lin Fengyi's sudden appearance. She composed herself and asked politely, "Does official Lin have anything to say to Qingyan?" Other than that, she could not think of any other reason. Lin Fengyi studied her seriously. This girl was indeed smart. No wonder Xiao Su was so assured to leave her alone in Jiangnan. No wonder this girl dared to follow him to the front lines behind Xiao Su's back. "Miss Chu, may I have a word with you?" Chu Qingyan nodded without hesitation. "This way, please." This courtyard had been reserved by her people earlier tonight. She was not worried that others would overhear their conversation, so Chu Qingyan led him to the courtyard. The moonlight rippled on the ground like water, and the originally stuffy air became much cooler due to the cool breeze that blew in from time to time. Perhaps because she had settled most of her worries, Chu Qingyan let out a deep breath and felt refreshed. She then turned around and asked Lin Fengyi, "Lord Lin, if you have anything to say, just say it." Lin Fengyi stood under the parasol tree. His white robes fluttered in the wind, and he had a gentle smile on his face. It was hard to imagine that such a gentle and modest young master would be a righteous and impartial court official. Thinking of this, Chu Qingyan was lost in thought. Such an unpredictable man had been taken in by her just like that. She had to admit that enemies were bound to meet. At this moment, Lin Fengyi spoke. "Miss Chu, I did come here today because I have something to say to you. However, it is not to persuade you to give up on following Xiao Su to the front lines. It is about the battle for the throne." Chu Qingyan did not know why this topic was suddenly brought up. Lin Fengyi's expression was still calm. He said slowly, "I have known Xiao Su for many years. I know his nature. I know that he does not want to be involved in the battle for the throne. Especially after you appeared, he did not want to be involved. However, I am not doing this for Boren. Boren died for me. Even if he does not fight for the throne, someone will force him to do so." At this point, Lin Fengyi's eyes darkened. "For example, the imperial edict this time." Chu Qingyan was instantly stunned. To outsiders, such words were simply disgraceful, especially coming from the mouth of such an important official. But looking at him, it was as if he was just talking about the weather. Chu Qingyan's mind quickly returned to what he had just said. She frowned slightly. "Can't you wait until the war is over before you leave?" Lin Fengyi shook his head. "Things aren't as simple as you think. Why don't you just leave from the start? Otherwise, if you get involved again, it won't be so easy to leave." Chu Qingyan did not understand. "Official Lin, can you be clearer?" He nodded and sighed softly. His Majesty does not like Xiao Su and favors the fourth prince. This is something that many people know. Xishuan has always favored the elder over the younger. In addition to Xiao Su's reputation, there is naturally a group of officials in the imperial court who support Xiao Su. There is also the Liang family. If His Majesty wants to eliminate all difficulties in appointing the fourth prince, he will have to win the support of the officials in the imperial court. Unfortunately, the fourth prince has been raised in the depths of the palace since he was young and does not have a strong foundation. This is why His Majesty wants him to take command when Nansung invades. It is mainly to let him gain a foothold in the imperial court. Unfortunately, not only did he not stop Nansung, but he also lost many cities. Chu Qingyan continued his words. Lin Fengyi nodded. "That's right. At this time, His Majesty is under pressure from the officials, and he can't find a better person to replace him as commander. He can only issue an edict to recall Xiao Su. However, in His Majesty's heart, Xiao Su has always been a stumbling block for the fourth prince. He wants to take back the cities, but he doesn't want Xiao Su's achievements to reach a higher level. His heart is very conflicted, but he has no choice. You're saying that if Big Ice wins, then he will become an even greater threat to the fourth prince's position. Then, His Majesty will see him as a thorn in his side. When that time comes, it will be disadvantageous to Big Ice?" Chu Qingyan guessed as she followed his words. "That's not impossible." Back then, Xiao Su had been suppressed by His Majesty, and even tried to assassinate him. Lin Fengyi's lips curled, revealing a mocking smile. Chu Qingyan fell silent. It wasn't that she hadn't thought about this before, but when someone else said it out loud, she felt even more wronged for Big Ice, who only cared about the people and the country. She felt that Big Ice, who had such a biased father, wasn't worth it. "Tonight, I wanted to tell you that if there comes a day when you two can't leave that abyss, and father and son become enemies, I hope you can persuade him." Lin Fengyi's voice suddenly lowered. If Chu Qingyan wasn't in front of him, she wouldn't have been able to hear him clearly. Chu Qingyan's brows trembled. "You want him to back down?" His originally heavy heart relaxed a little because of her angry questioning. Xiao Su's foresight wasn't bad. This little girl wasn't as weak as he thought. "No, it's just that when it's time to break, it's time to break. When Lin Fengyi said this, Chu Qingyan was shocked. Wasn't he just joking? Lin Fengyi was amused by her reaction, but he quickly regained his composure. Xiao Su is filial and responsible. Even when he was hurt all over by his family when he left the capital, he didn't hate them. A long time ago, I was worried that one day, his life would be ruined by his family, but, when he said this, he looked at Chu Qingyan, his gaze filled with admiration and gentleness. Your appearance changed a lot of Xiao Su's thoughts. Or it could be said that in the past, he didn't think about the future, but now, he has started to plan for the future with you. So, I hope that if it's time to make a choice, I hope you can persuade him to live for himself. Either you go far away, or you give it your all. After Lin Fengyi finished speaking, he looked deeply at Chu Qingyan. I believe that you can do it. Chu Qingyan murmured. This was the first time she heard so much from Lin Fengyi, and it was related to such a cruel and unknown tomorrow. Why are you telling me this? Chu Qingyan looked at him. Her surprise disappeared, and there was judgment in her eyes. As a good friend, I can't bear to see him walk down the path of no return. There's one more thing. Every man for himself, and the devil takes the hindmost. After Lin Fengyi said this, he smiled mysteriously, then nodded at her as a sign of farewell. He turned and left calmly. Xiuli is still waiting outside. I'll take my leave first. Chu Qingyan looked at the back of his white robe and frowned slightly. She didn't understand his last sentence. It seemed like a joke, but it also seemed to have a deeper meaning. It was hard to grasp. It wasn't until a long time later when she saw him in the capital that she understood the meaning of his words today. Chapter 872. She had made preparations for the Fuli mountain range and the development of 4 or 5 industries at the same time just in case. She could only protect herself if she had no other choice. However, she didn't expect that it would come so quickly. It was as if there was an abyss behind her when she turned around. Lin Fengyi's words today had a huge impact on her. She was right. Going to the front lines this time wasn't a dragon's den. Going back to the capital was a tiger's den. Therefore, she had to stay by Big Ice Cube's side no matter what. Thinking of this, she was even more determined. She turned and left the courtyard, walking towards her parents' courtyard. Although it was very late at night, the lights in her parents' room were still brightly lit. The moment Chu Qingyan entered, she saw that her mother was busy with something. Her father was also pacing around the house. Only when they saw her did they stop. Kai, it's so late. Why are you here? Mrs. Chu asked. Chu Qingyan smiled. Dad, Mom, I have something to tell you. But before I say it, please be mentally prepared. Mrs. Chu and Mr. Chu didn't know why, but they nodded seriously. Thus, Chu Qingyan told them about her plan to leave Jiangnan. As expected, Mrs. Chu was shocked. Kai, you're a girl. Why would you go to the battlefield? His Highness has been through hundreds of battles. Of course, he's not afraid. Aren't you just fooling around? Mrs. Chu, who was always gentle, was showing signs of anger. Chu Qingyan knew that her mother wouldn't let her off easily. She was about to say what she had thought of on her way here when her father beat her to it. It's good to go to the battlefield. Kai, let me tell you. I used to be a great general too. You can go there and beat the enemy to a pulp. Then, you can win back a great general. Mr. Chu patted his daughter's shoulder with satisfaction. It was as if he could already see his daughter riding on colorful clouds, wearing a battle robe, and carrying a large sword. The more he thought about it, the happier he became. He immediately turned and grabbed his wife's arm. He grinned and said, as the saying goes, a good father will not have a bad son. Dan Yang, you have to believe that Kai will come back in glory. Dad, like father, like son, Chu Qingyan said softly. Mr. Chu waved his hand. Who cares what kind of father he is? You have to win back a great general's father. After being interrupted by Mr. Chu, Mrs. Chu didn't know whether to be angry or laugh. In the end, she sighed heavily and said, "My daughter has grown up and grown up. I can't control her anymore. A daughter can also protect her country and her family. I've been learning martial arts and military tactics for so many years. Isn't it all for the sake of putting them to use one day? Moreover, His Highness' trip this time will be fraught with danger. I want to lend him a hand. As the saying goes, only by sharing weal and woe can we share fortune together." Chu Machen's mother raised her hand and tapped Chu Machen's nose. "You are not married yet. Aren't you ashamed to say this?" Chu Qingyan blushed. "I'm afraid I won't be able to find someone better than him in this lifetime." Mrs. Chu shook her head. Although she was reluctant to part with her daughter, she was already an adult and had her own ideas. As a parent, it was best not to interfere. It was best to be more understanding and tolerant. Mrs. Chu took out an amulet from her sewing basket and said, "This is something I made for His Highness. It's a blessing that he will be safe and sound. When your father went to the battlefield, he also carried this amulet that I made for him. That's how he was able to survive. It seems that I have to make another one tonight." Hearing this, Chu Qingyan knew that her mother had agreed. Her eyes reddened, and she threw herself into her mother's arms. "I'm unfilial. I'm already an adult, but I still make you worry so much." Mrs. Chu patted her back gently with one hand and said lovingly, "Don't feel guilty. Stay with His Highness. It's not easy for him to be alone." "Okay." Chu Qingyan nodded, choking with sobs. At this moment, Chu Machen's father mysteriously took out a small bag from the side and handed it to his daughter. "Father, what's this?" Chu Qingyan took it in confusion. "This is a peace stone for inverted scallions. I only picked up so many. I didn't expect you to be going too. Then you two can share it. Half each. That way, your relationship won't break up." Chu Machen's father said happily. Chu Qingyan opened the bag and saw that it was filled with small stones. Although she found it funny, she was more touched. When she left, she looked back at her mother, who was surrounded by her father and sewing thread. Suddenly, she could understand the feelings expressed in the ancient poem. The thread in the loving mother's hand, the clothes on the wandering child's body. Sewing tightly before leaving, afraid to return late. She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, the tears had faded, and they were replaced by determination. She would come back. She would come back safe and sound. She and the ice cube still had a lot of things to do. In the blink of an eye, it was the second day. Because they didn't alert anyone when they first came to Jiangnan, they planned to leave quietly before the town woke up. Sun Kun also woke up early in the morning. He didn't just want to see Xiao Su off, but also wait for him to leave so that he could report back. "Your Highness, I hope you'll take care of yourself on this trip." Sun Kun stepped forward and bowed respectfully. Xiao Su glanced at him indifferently. "Thank you for your auspicious words, Lord Sun. This prince also has a few words for you to pass on to the left Prime Minister." This cold voice made Sun Kun's body tremble. He bowed even lower. Since this prince has agreed to take over the commander-in-chief's position, it doesn't mean that this prince is willing to follow his path. So tell him not to spend so much effort to pave the way and just do his job well. Xiao Su's voice was indifferent. After he finished speaking, he let him leave. Sun Kun stood up tremblingly. He bowed again and again before standing to the side. Xiao Su's expression became even more indifferent. The reason why Sun Kun came to Jiangnan to issue the decree must have been arranged by his grandfather. His grandfather did this to help him hide the fact that he left Lian City without permission. The second reason was that Sun Kun was an upright official. He couldn't be cruel to such a person. Moreover, he would more or less listen to what he said. Grandpa had a good plan, but unfortunately, his life wasn't something that could be easily arranged by others. The sky was still dark. The fire spirit and the earth spirit led Xiao Lai on their horses and silently stood at the door, quietly waiting for instructions. Father Chu, Mother Chu, and the others all looked at them with concern and occasionally gave them a few instructions. Xiao Su glanced around and found that the most important person was missing. He couldn't help but frown deeply. This little fellow disappeared last night and didn't appear today. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. It was obvious that she was angry because he didn't let her come with him. If there was a chance, he would come and coax her. If there was a chance. Even he couldn't guarantee it. Chapter 873. Young Princess Consort has been working too hard recently and is exhausted. She might still be sleeping. Hualing followed his master's gaze and understood who he was waiting for. He wondered what young Princess Consort was busy with and why she hadn't appeared yet. However, he still explained for her, afraid that his master would be sad. Xiao Su retracted his gaze and nodded to everyone. Then, he turned to his subordinates and ordered, "Let's go." Yes. The sound of uniform footsteps and the sound of turning horses broke the silence of the night. Xiao Su was about to mount his horse when his ears twitched and his gaze turned to the gate. At this moment, a familiar figure appeared at the gate. Unfortunately, it wasn't the person he was waiting for. Xining quickly ran to Xiao Su and said with an unnatural expression, "Your Highness, my master asked you to be careful. She's still angry, so she won't be coming to see you off. She'll write you a letter when she's not angry anymore." Xiao Su's eyes flashed with understanding. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but he couldn't put her in danger because of a moment of soft-heartedness. He nodded. Then, his eyes narrowed and he mounted his horse. "White impermanence, black impermanence, hollow, you have to protect my son-in-law well. Also, you have to protect yourselves well." Father Chu waved his claws and said reluctantly. Hualing, Turan, and Ethereal didn't want to admit this nickname at all. They could only nod as the fierce cavalry stifled their laughter. Xiao Su raised his whip. "Let's go." His response was the neighing of the fierce horses and the sound of hooves. Men don't cry easily. He narrowed his eyes and rode against the wind into the night. Every time he left for the battlefield, he didn't think about whether he could come back alive. But this time, he had misgivings and missed her. He didn't look back. He hoped to see her again. After he left, Chen Yanluo looked up at the eaves and chuckled. He's so cruel that he won't even see him. Is he trying to make him feel guilty? Only then did everyone notice the charming figure sitting on the glazed roof tile. Chu Qingyan brushed off the dew on her body and jumped down with a smile. He's very sharp. I'm afraid that he'll see through me if I'm not sad enough. Moreover, I made him feel guilty today so that he won't be so angry when he sees me again. Chen Yanluo smiled. Not bad, not bad. You didn't let love get to your head. You're still very rational. Chu Qingyan shrugged, then turned to her parents and said, I'm leaving too. Take care. Mrs. Chu's eyes reddened, and her lips trembled. She had so much to say, but in the end, she only said, be careful. Chu Qingyan's eyes reddened. She smiled and said, I'll be back soon. Mrs. Chu wiped her eyes with a handkerchief and nodded repeatedly. Chu Qingyan was about to bid farewell to her father when she saw his expression flickering. She was about to ask when a pair of wings suddenly sprouted from her father's back. Shanghai? She asked curiously. As soon as he finished speaking, a huge eagle walked out from behind Chu Yunqing's father. Behind it were several eagle guards, as well as one big and 3 small snow wolves. What was important was not these, but the small cloth bags that Little Hai and the others were carrying. Why did they look so much like cloth bags? Chu Qingyan immediately turned to look at her father. Father, what's going on? Why are Shanghai and the others here? Mr. Chu scratched his head and said guiltily, when I came out today, I accidentally mentioned it to them, and then they, Shanghai and its eagle guards puffed out their chests with their heads held high. The big one and the 3 small ones rubbed against her feet and acted cute. Father, don't tell me that they want to go with me. Chu Qingyan pointed at them in disbelief. Mr. Chu coughed softly. They're too smart. They're clamoring for food to be prepared for them. Anyway, it's none of my business. As soon as Mr. Chu finished speaking, Xiao Hai and the others shook the cloth bags on their backs, looking very energetic. She had tried her best to prevent them from following her, but she didn't expect that it would still happen. Forget it. They're not ordinary creatures. If they want to follow, let them. Cheng Yenluo spoke up at the right time. Chu Qingyan's shoulders drooped as she looked helplessly at the bouncing animals. When they saw her looking at them, they immediately sat up straight and looked very obedient. She had no choice but to agree. With Xiao Hai and the others interrupting her, the sadness of parting eased considerably. Su Yi and the others had already brought out their horses. Chu Qingyan flipped onto her horse, and Glutinous Rice Ball jumped onto her back. The others also got on their horses one after another. Only the gerfalcon flew up and circled in the air to prove that it could travel alone. After bidding farewell to her parents, Chu Qingyan raised her hand to get the horse ready. Suddenly, she saw an empty horse beside her. She thought that Su Yi and the others had prepared an extra one, but she didn't expect to see Yen Luo take the bag from the servant and walk towards her. She was shocked again. Wait, are you telling me that you want to go with me? Cheng Yenluo lowered her eyebrows, but quickly raised them again. She smiled and said, why not? No, I can't let you take the risk. Although Yen Luo knew martial arts, it could only be considered as self-defense. She couldn't agree. I don't need your protection. If necessary, I can save people. This isn't a losing deal. Cheng Yenluo crossed her arms and said nonchalantly. Chu Qingyan couldn't accept her words. Yen Luo, I won't agree. There are military doctors in the army who can save people. Little girl, do you think an ordinary military doctor can be compared to me? Cheng Yenluo shook her head with a smile, her face full of confidence. Chu Qingyan was silent for a moment before she slowly said seriously, give me a reason why I have to go. When Cheng Yenluo heard this, the relaxed expression on her face quickly faded. She pursed her lips and looked at the deserted road. She said calmly, I don't know, but a voice in my heart is telling me that I have to go. Chu Qingyan followed her line of sight. The misty path seemed to hold the answer she was looking for. All right, I agree. But you have to guarantee your safety. If the situation doesn't look good, you have to come back. Chu Qingyan could only take a step back. She could see the determination in Yen Luo's eyes. She knew that she couldn't stop her. If she refused, Yen Luo would find a way to follow. In that case, she would be even more insecure. Cheng Yenluo swept away the dazed look on her face and nimbly mounted the horse. Then, she smiled sweetly at Chu Qingyan. I knew you wouldn't have the heart to refuse. Then, as if she was afraid that Yen Luo would go back on her words, she immediately whipped her horse and moved forward. Chu Qingyan couldn't do anything about her. She looked at her departing figure, then turned to look at her closest relatives and the crowd standing on the steps. She deeply imprinted their faces in her heart. Then, she waved her hand and rode forward without looking back. She couldn't bear to look back. Don't lower your head. Tears will fall. Xining, Yang Xiaohuan, and the rest of the Chu family watched her disappear into the fog. Tears streamed down their faces. She didn't know when they would meet again. She put her hands together and prayed that they would be safe and sound. Chapter 874. Chu Qingyan and her party moved forward quickly because Xiao Su and his men had already left the city. Xiao Lai's cavalry were all experts in riding horses. In a short period of time, she could not even see their shadows. Fortunately, she had the map in her hands. Even if she could not find them, following the route, she would be able to find the three armies. At that time, she would be able to find the big ice cube. Wouldn't that be an easy task? Just as she was immersed in her thoughts, Yen Luo suddenly called out to her. She raised her head and looked at her strangely. Yen Luo gave her a meaningful glance, and only then did Chu Qingyan look ahead blankly. Coincidentally, there was a thick fog today, so she dared to follow Big Ice Cube and his men openly. At this moment, there was a tall figure standing in the fog. She tried hard to open her eyes. When she saw the figure in the fog clearly, her pupils shrank. How could it be him? Dong Ting. Cheng Yenluo patted her shoulder. We'll give you some time to settle it. We'll go first. I'll catch up with you later. As she spoke, she gradually slowed down. When the people behind her overtook her one by one, she flipped over and dismounted. Holding the reins, she walked to Higashio Motetsu. Before she could speak, the other party had already lazily opened his mouth. You didn't even say a word before leaving. Is it really okay to leave without saying goodbye? To think that I woke up so early in the morning just to see you off. Chu Qingyan heaved a sigh of relief when she heard his slightly reproachful voice. This person didn't blame her. She hugged glutinous rice ball and stood in front of the horse. She looked a little apologetic as she said, it was a sudden decision. I didn't have time to inform you. You're a magnanimous person, so please don't be calculative with me. Although Higashio Motetsu's expression was languid, his gaze fell on her with an unfathomable light. He snorted lightly. You've always valued your lover over your friends. Don't mention it. Chu Qingyan hurriedly smiled. No way. As the saying goes, a prime minister is magnanimous. Don't be so stingy. At most, I'll apologize to you. Higashio Motetsu raised a finger and wagged it in front of her eyes. First of all, I'm not the prime minister, so I can't do anything. Second of all, if an apology is useful, do we still need the government? Upon hearing this, Chu Qingyan put away the fawning expression on her face. She raised her eyebrows and glanced at him. She sneered, don't open a dye house just because I give you some color. You climb up a pole just because I give you some. That's not what friends do. Higashio Motetsu sighed and shook his head. You've given yourself away, haven't you? You just don't take me seriously. I held back the opportunity to play chess with Duke of Zhou and came here to see you off. How could you treat me like this? I'm so sad. I'm so careless in making friends. Chu Qingyan's eyebrows twitched at his words. In the end, she couldn't stand his abandoned look and finally said, all right. I know how good you are. I'm very grateful that you held back the time to spend your sweet dreams in bed and braved the dew to see me. It's good that you know. Higashio Motetsu blinked and returned to his usual mischievous self. Chu Qingyan knew that she had been tricked by him again. She said in a bad mood, all right, I've seen you and seen you off. I should be on my way. Otherwise, I won't be able to leave the city in time. Higashio Motetsu saw her anxious expression and his heart suddenly turned cold. However, he still had a smile on his face. There's no hurry. I'm not just here to see you off. I'm also here to give you a gift. Gift? Are you planning to curry favor with me before I become famous on the battlefield? Aren't you thinking too much? Am I that kind of snobbish person? Chu Qingyan couldn't help but laugh until she bent over. Seeing that she was laughing until tears were about to come out, Higashio Motetsu was speechless. Don't forget that it's your birthday in 4 days. Didn't you ask me for a gift before? Why is it that every time something comes to your mouth, it becomes nothing good? If you say that again, I'll take back what I just said. Chu Qingyan immediately stopped laughing when she heard that. She stretched out her hand in front of him and said shamelessly, it'll be a waste if I don't take it. Quickly take it out and let me see what good things you've prepared for me. Higashio Motetsu wanted to tease her a little more. However, when he saw her clear eyes that were like a stream with tears of laughter, the clear luster flashing in the mist behind her, it was as if there was only this bit of light in the world. It was pure and clean. He couldn't help but shut his mouth. Sometimes, he would wonder why there were such bright eyes in this world. They were more dazzling than the stars in the sky, and they could make the darkness in the depths of people's hearts disappear. He lowered his eyes and smiled lightly. Then, he pretended to be helpless and obedient as he took out a slender box from his sleeve. He then casually stuffed it into her hand. For you. I really can't stand you. The extra weight in her hand made Chu Qingyan hold it tightly in surprise. She looked down and then frowned in confusion. It's a little heavy. What is it? Let me open it and see. Do you think it's appropriate to open a gift in front of me? Higashio Motetsu knocked her head casually, and then smiled as she bared her teeth. I'll open it on your birthday. Didn't you say that there's not enough time? Hurry up and go. After his reminder, Chu Qingyan immediately put the box into the bag on her shoulder. Then, she looked up at him and smiled brightly. Then I'll be going. I won't say any more nonsense. Take care. With that, she leaped onto her horse and grabbed the reins. Just as she was about to start the horse, she turned around and smiled. Dong Ting, we'll meet again someday. After saying that, she whipped her horse and galloped forward. When she turned back, he was still standing in the same place. She patted her forehead and said in annoyance, I forgot to ask him how he knew I was leaving. Forget it, it's more important to hurry up. Dong Ting watched as the crimson figure disappeared into the fog. It was as if a red light had flashed across his life, and then disappeared into a place that didn't belong to him. Little girl, we'll meet again someday. Until then, you have to take care of yourself. Young master, how did you know that Miss Chu would follow the King of England to the battlefield once the imperial edict was issued? A figure appeared in the fog. She has deep feelings for Xiaosu. I don't even need to guess. Higashio Motetsu put his hands behind his back and slowly walked in the opposite direction of Chu Qingyan. Then how did you know that she would choose to secretly follow the King of England? Xuanqi Zimo asked again. His lips curved into a smile. Because I understand her. Then why didn't young master persuade Miss Chu? Going to the front lines is no joke. Xuanqi Zimo asked casually. Higashio Motetsu's footsteps suddenly stopped, but he quickly regained his composure. Even his subordinates didn't notice. Don't you think you're talking too much today? His resplendent voice was filled with an imposing aura. Xuanqi Zimo immediately fell silent. Higashio Motetsu strolled through the fog. His expression was so calm that it made people tremble in fear. It wasn't that he didn't want to persuade her, but he knew the result. He never did anything that was useless. Chapter 875. They had already left Jiangnan for 3 days. Xiaosu's group traveled day and night, heading north without stopping. At dusk, everyone stopped to rest. Huoling untied the iron ring on the pigeon's leg and handed the letter to his master. Xiaosu put down the water bottle in his hand and roughly skimmed through the letter. His eyes darkened. Over the past few days, they had constantly received news from the front lines. Nansong had already sent the army south. Xiao Ran had been assassinated in the last battle and his whereabouts were unknown. The army was like a dragon without a leader and was currently waiting 100 li away. Huoling took the letter and quickly skimmed through it. His eyes were filled with surprise. Master, the fourth prince is not here. The army's morale is unstable. Now that you have not taken over, I'm afraid something unexpected has happened. We must arrive as soon as possible. We cannot let those with ill intentions take advantage of us. Xiaosu's complexion was not very good. He did not expect that Xiao Ran would go missing. If he fell into the enemy's hands, he was afraid that he would be implicated in the war. If he was unlucky, Xiaosu narrowed his eyes. If that happened, it would be difficult to explain to the capital. Perhaps there would be another bloody storm. Does the capital know about this news? Xiaosu regained his calm and asked in a deep voice. Huoling shook his head. It has been suppressed for the time being. They seem to be sending people to investigate and do not dare to alert the higher-ups. Xiaosu frowned. Suppressed? Huoling nodded. His tone was a bit strange, as if he was disdainful. I heard that there are many people from the right prime minister following the fourth prince. Those who can follow the army are not low-ranking officials. They probably want to use this opportunity to quell the war to get promoted. However, they did not expect the fourth prince to suffer consecutive defeats. If even the fourth prince is unable to protect him, the higher-ups will not let them off so easily. Therefore, they want to first find people to minimize the severity of the situation. Hearing this, Xiaosu was silent for a moment. He thought of that worried, childish face when he left the capital 5 years ago. His voice was tense as he said, "Send people to the place where the fourth prince disappeared to search for him. Find him as soon as possible. If there is anything, report it immediately. If he is alive, I want to see him. If he is dead, I want to see his corpse." At this time, the conflict between the two factions had already reached a critical point. If it was anyone else, it would already be good if they didn't hit them while they were down, but his master was actually worried about his safety. However, Huo Ling was not surprised by his master's decision at all. Although he did not have any bad impressions of the fourth prince, they stood on different sides. So, he hoped that his master would not interfere, but his master had already given his orders and would not take them back. He could not interfere and could only agree. When Huo Ling left to handle matters and Turan came back from scouting, Xiaosu suddenly remembered something. With a solemn expression, he said, "Turan, have you received any letters from Jiangnan in the past 2 days?" Turan knew that his master was waiting for news from the little Wang Fei. He shook his head and said, "They are all from the front lines. Maybe we were in too much of a hurry and the carrier pigeons have not caught up." Xiaosu was not very satisfied with this explanation. He had ordered his subordinates to write down the little fellow's daily routine and send it to him. He hoped that nothing had happened. The news that Xiaosu had received the edict and was about to meet with the 3 armies quickly spread to Jingdo. The gloom of the past few days was swept away by the civil and military officials of the court. Everyone was in high spirits, their faces full. It was as though Xiaosu was not going to fight, but had already won and returned to court. It was said that when he saw this scene, the Sichuan emperor did not show any expression, but when he returned to the imperial study, he threw a great tantrum. This was a story for another day. Chaoyang Palace. Luo Yun reported the news from the left minister to Liang Ho. Then she gently patted Liang Ho's shoulder and said with a smile, "His Highness listens to your words. Otherwise, the matter of leading the army would be uncertain." Even though Su-er has not been by Ben Gong's side for many years, Ben Gong understands his temperament. No matter how stubborn he is, he will not disobey Ben Gong's orders. After putting down the heavy stone in her heart, Liang Ho relaxed and her expression was carefree. Whenever she thought of seeing Consort Yu's gloomy face in the imperial garden today, she felt as though she had poured out all the gloominess she had accumulated over the past few days. Her gaze was dark and cold. This little wench, if she wanted to fight with her, she would have to cultivate for a few more years. "Then, Master, what should we do next?" Luo Yun asked. "Father said that we are in the limelight during this period of time, so we shouldn't act rashly for the time being. Later, send someone to inform the uncles of the 3 kingdoms to let Danjing and Danbing recuperate well. When Su-er returns, they will definitely have a place by his side." Liang Ho thought of the sorry state her 2 nieces were in when they were sent back. It could be said that they had been chased out of Jiangnan. She felt a bit embarrassed and threw a tantrum, but in the end, he was still her son. Moreover, he was so far away that she couldn't teach him a lesson. In addition, the assassins she had sent out had all been wiped out, so she could only swallow her anger for now. Because of this matter, her 3rd brother seemed to have a bit of a grudge against her. Even though she felt that her 2 nieces were not bad-looking, they were quite brainless. She had only chosen them as a last resort. However, they were still people from her maternal family and would be useful in the future. Thus, she had to appease them for now and make arrangements when the time came. Luo Yun nodded. In the beginning, the 2 misses were not able to enter His Highness's eyes because they did not spend enough time together. When they returned to the capital, His Highness might be moved after interacting for a long time. Liang Ho smiled coldly. Even if he is not moved, Su-er's Wangfei can only be someone from the Liang family. Luo Yun repeatedly agreed. Liang Ho closed her eyes and enjoyed Luo Yun's shoulder massage. A moment later, she pretended to inadvertently remember something. Yesterday, Imperial Physician Shen went to Yun Gairen's palace. Was his body not feeling well? Luo Yun said as she rubbed her shoulder. Nubi was about to report this matter to Master. Yun Guiren said to the outside that she had caught a cold and closed the doors to visitors. However, recently, she has frequently ordered the imperial kitchen to prepare sour plum soup. I also heard the palace maid say that Yun Guiren has recently liked sour food. Nubi only heard this bit of information and has not yet asked Imperial Physician Shen. Based on Luo Yun's description, there was no need to guess. Most likely, Yun Guiren was pregnant, but in order to hide it from others and not be targeted, she hid it first. She probably wanted to wait for the fetus to stabilize before finding a good time to let His Majesty know. At that time, there would be someone to protect the dragon fetus. She wouldn't be afraid. Yun Guiren was planning this. Don't ask the imperial physician. Empress Liang narrowed her eyes, a cold light flashing in her eyes. Consort Yu has been paying attention to the front lines recently. I'm afraid that she is less concerned about the inner palace. Have someone leak some information to the palace maids by her side. When the time comes, someone will go find Imperial Physician Shen for us. We can just watch from the side. Hearing this, Luo Yun nodded in understanding. The corners of his mouth also revealed an indescribable smile. Master is right. Recently, there hasn't been anything exciting happening in the palace. It's quite boring. Now that there's going to be a good show, we have to enjoy it. This time, Liang Ho finally closed her eyes comfortably. Killing with a borrowed knife, this move was not strange in the inner palace. The people who were chosen were just unlucky. Chapter 876. Xiao Su made a mental note that he hadn't received a letter in 3 days. If the carrier pigeon didn't arrive in the next day, he would send someone back. He was worried that the people hiding in the dark would take the opportunity to make a move on her when he wasn't around. But what Xiao Su didn't expect was that the person he was worried about was lying leisurely not far from him, basking in the moonlight. Chu Qingyan was chewing on a straw and lying on the grass with one leg crossed over the other. Except for Jin Xian and Su Yi, the rest of her subordinates were hiding in the dark. In the past 6 months, the Shaolai cavalry in Jiangnan had been trained to follow Chu Qingyan, assassinate, disguise, and collect intelligence. They had also learned a lot from her. It could be said that they had completely become her shadow guards. Now, the Shaolai cavalry in Jiangnan was no longer called the Shaolai cavalry. Chu Qingyan had given them another name. The Shaolai cavalry only recognized her as their master. Now that Jin Xian was their leader, everyone was under his command. At this time, Jinxin checked the bag on his body and reported to his master, "Master, we don't have much dry food left. It can barely last for another day." Chu Qingyan stopped chewing on the straw. Because they were in a hurry, they didn't have time to make rujiamo. They only brought some food. She thought for a moment and said, "We'll pass by a village tomorrow afternoon. Take some money and buy some food from the villagers. By the way, try to avoid His Highness's people. I've calculated that the food they brought can only last for 2 days. I think they'll have the same plan as us." Jin Xian nodded. "I'll be careful." Chu Qingyan nodded. On the other side, Cheng Yen Luo, who came back with a pot of water, happened to overhear their conversation. Her eyes fell on Chu Qingyan. Under the dim moonlight, the bright red figure was like a rare beauty in the night. Her expression was unrestrained, and she was even more charming than a man. Even though Cheng Yen Luo knew that she wasn't a man, she couldn't help but fall into a trance. Her eyes were filled with pure admiration. Wasn't the heavens fair? If one was gifted with exceptional talent, one might not necessarily have a good appearance, and vice versa. But the woman in front of her was enough to make most of the world's outstanding women blush with shame. Most handsome men would beat the wall in shame. What? Could it be that you've fallen for my robe? Come, beauty, give me a smile. A clear voice rang out, accompanied by a cool breeze and a bright moon. It reverberated around the mountain stream, giving people an illusion of emptiness. However, the teasing words made people's faces turn black. If you're really a man, I'm afraid you're a playboy. I used to worry that your big ice cube would be unfaithful to you. Now, I'm worried for him. Cheng Yenluo sat down beside her, but there was a distance between the two of them. Her disdain was obvious. Cheng Yenluo couldn't help but twitch her lips when she saw her acting. Enough. Can't you see that your subordinates are watching from the side? Chu Qingyan raised her brows. They're my accomplices, the evil tyrant. They only listen to me. Hearing this, Cheng Yenluo glanced at Jinxin and Su Yi. She saw that they were guarding the door loyally and were not affected at all. Cheng Yenluo's face darkened even more. It was true that the kind of strange master would have the same kind of strange subordinates. The two of them chatted for a while. Cheng Yenluo raised the question that had been bothering her along the way. I remember that before Xiao Su left, he arranged for many covert guards to protect you. Now that you're no longer in Jiangnan, aren't you afraid that they'll send a message to Xiao Su? Then you'll be exposed. Chu Qingyan propped herself up. She rested her chin on one hand and looked at the person beside her. Her eyes were full of slyness. You probably don't know that most of my men know how to disguise themselves, right? Chu Qingyan is still in charge of the mansion. However, she's so angry that she's refusing to see anyone. Even Big Ice's covert guards don't dare to barge into her room. So. No one knows that the real Chu Qingyan is gone. But when we left that day, wasn't there a lot of commotion? Cheng Yenluo continued to raise her doubts. That's simple. I drugged their food the night before. When they woke up, everything had returned to normal and the person in the house had already switched places. Realization dawned on Cheng Yenluo. Don't blame you for being so fearless. It turns out that you've already planned everything. This is called having a policy and a countermeasure. Impressive. That's right. Cheng Yenluo shook her head and sneered. You're not modest at all. But to be honest, little girl, there are times when I really admire you. If you were a man, with such scheming and intelligence, you'd be able to make a name for yourself in the imperial court, the pugilistic world, the battlefield, or the business world. You make it sound like I've accomplished nothing. Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows and looked back at her with a chuckle. Cheng Yenluo recalled her struggles in the business world over the past 6 months. She couldn't help but smile. I forgot that you've already made a name for yourself in the business world. Chu Qingyan lay down again. Her gaze fell on the night sky above. The dazzling light fell into her eyes. It was hazy. Actually, I'm not as good as you make me out to be. I'm just doing what is necessary in a necessary situation. I remember someone once said that if you want someone to be strong, you have to give him someone he wants to protect. At this point, she sighed softly, but the corners of her lips curled up. It's just that I have too many people I want to protect. Actually, it's not a burden, but a blessing. Why do you say so? Because the more people you want to protect, the more you have. Life tends to be complete. Such a life is blissful and fulfilling. Cheng Yenluo turned to look at her in surprise, but only saw a gentle side profile. So, having people you want to protect is a blessing? Yenluo, what about you? Why do you suddenly want to go to the battlefield with me? I want to stay by Big Ice Cube's side. What about you? Who do you want to stay by? Just as she was in a daze, a sharp voice came at her. It was light but powerful. In the windy night, at the foot of a mountain in front of a village, a black mass of assassins was lying in ambush. 2 people were standing on top of the mountain. According to the route, Xiao Su and his party will probably arrive here tomorrow evening. As long as they fall into our ambush, they won't be able to escape even if they have wings. The person on the left laughed eerily. In such a quiet night, it was creepy. The person on the right was a little uneasy about his confidence. Xiao Su is not an ordinary person. He has Sichuan's legendary Shaolai cavalry by his side. It's best to be careful. I understand. Tell His Highness that I won't let him down. The person on the left retracted his arrogance and replied seriously. Then I'll congratulate you in advance. As long as you kill Xiao Su, His Highness will reward you handsomely. The person on the right smiled and cupped his hands. Thank you for your auspicious words. The two looked at each other and smiled viciously. Chapter 877. Cicadas started to chirp, adding a lot of heat to the quiet night. As soon as Chu Qingyan finished speaking, there seemed to be no other sound in the mountain except for the chirping of insects. The person being asked lowered her eyes, her long hair falling on both sides of her face, covering her bright and beautiful face. Her expression couldn't be seen clearly. Her hands were folded on her knees, her fingers curled up unconsciously. The green grass in her eyes suddenly became blurry. Then, it was as if she saw that night, that handsome young man in white standing in front of her facing the night wind. Her eyes suddenly became wet. Little girl, I heard it the night you summoned me into your sleeve. She lowered her voice, as if she was suppressing some emotions. Chu Qingyan's eyebrows twitched. She turned to look at her, her voice soft and gentle. What did you hear? He said goodbye to me and asked me to live well in the future. Her voice was still soft, but the suppressed emotions were revealed as the words escaped her mouth. Chu Qingyan was slightly surprised. It wasn't hard to guess that the person should be ethereal. Originally, Big Ice Cube didn't want to let him go on this trip. She felt that a large part of the reason was that he didn't want Ethereal to miss out on Yen Luo again. However, Ethereal's attitude was very firm. Because no one could guarantee that they would come back alive from this trip. As his master's personal physician, he couldn't choose to retreat at this time. So in the end, Big Ice Cube could only agree. Then what did you think when you heard this? If Yen Luo had come here because of Kongling, would their relationship have taken a turn for the better? Chu Qingyan looked at her seriously, unwilling to miss out on any of her reactions. The entanglement between her and Ethereal had made others anxious. Now, Chu Qingyan's heart was in her throat. In her opinion, the two of them loved each other because of the incident in the past. Both of them were unwilling to face it, so they couldn't get over it. As long as one of them was willing to move forward, then this knot could be untied. Chu Qingyan's words made Cheng Yenluo fall into a daze. I don't know. She hugged her knees dejectedly and buried her face in her legs, as if she could hide herself this way and not have to work hard to see her heart clearly. Upon hearing this, Chu Qingyan sighed softly. As expected, she was hiding again. However, it was not easy to make Yen Luo reveal such emotions. Then you want to go to the battlefield because of him, right? The questioning tone was filled with certainty. Cheng Yenluo froze on the spot as if her thoughts had been exposed. After a while, she still didn't hear a response. Chu Qingyan thought that he wouldn't answer. Just when she was about to give up, she heard a mosquito-like voice. I'm afraid I'll regret it if I don't go. His low voice was filled with surrender to the deepest desires in his heart. Hearing this answer, Chu Qingyan subtly raised the corner of her mouth and continued to bite the straw in her mouth, laughing silently. The two of them had a chance. She thought treacherously that if Big Ice Cube saw her secretly following him, she could use the excuse of matchmaking for his subordinate to alleviate his anger. It would be the best of both worlds. At dawn, Xiao Su continued on with his men. On the way, Huling reported that the dry rations were about to run out. Xiao Su pondered for a moment and asked him to send a few men to buy dry rations at the villa in front of them, while the rest of the men rested in the woods on the side. At this time, Turin delivered a letter from Jiangnan. When Xiao Su saw this, he immediately took the letter, opened it, and read it without blinking. When Turin saw this, he thought that perhaps only news related to the young princess could make Master so impatient. Otherwise, the news from the front line would not have made Master so anxious. He was still thinking in his heart that after days of hurrying on the road, everyone was a little tired. His master's heart was worried about the front line, and his mood was even worse. He had originally hoped that the news of the little princess Consort would bring relief to his master, but he did not expect his master to frown after reading the letter. "Master, did something happen in Jiangnan?" Turan hurriedly asked. If something happened to the young princess at this time, master would not be able to leave with peace of mind. Xiaosu shook his head, "No." "Then why do you look so pale?" Turan sighed in relief and then asked in confusion. Xiaosu passed the letter to him. Turan hurriedly took it and hurriedly skimmed through it, but he did not understand. The letter says that the young princess will not come out for 4 days. It seems that she is still angry with master. But the young princess is worried about you, but the food sent to the room has been eaten as usual. Master, you don't have to worry. Xiaosu frowned, this is not like Ian's style. Turan did not understand. Xiaosu stood at the top of the mountain with his hands behind his back. His expression was unfathomable, and no one knew what he was thinking. Turan was even more puzzled by his master's sudden worry. But when his master was deep in thought, he never went forward to disturb him. The mountain wind blew, mixed with a faint smell of blood. Xiaosu's gaze suddenly focused in the distance, Turan. In a mansion in the capital, there was a tea-green figure standing with his back facing him. In front of him was a pool of lotus flowers. But it was not the season to bloom yet. The green lotus leaves fluttered in the wind like a young girl's skirt, swaying gracefully on the surface of the pool. The water in the pool was clear, and the lotus leaves were clustered together. At a glance, it was very pleasing. Behind the tea-green man stood 2 tall men wearing eunuch uniforms. But their burly figures and cold expressions did not look like court eunuchs. "How's the matter?" The man standing by the pool spoke slowly. His voice was as pleasant as the tinkling of spring water. One of the eunuchs respectfully replied, "Our people have informed the Prince of Nansang of the 4th Prince's location. Currently, the 4th Prince has fallen into the Southern Sung Army's encirclement. If there are no accidents, the 4th Prince will not be able to escape. Tell the Prince of Nansang that it is more useful to capture him alive than to kill him." The tea-green man smiled faintly. "Yes." The other eunuch reported, "The King of England has already left for the battlefield. The Prince of Nansang received our news and has already sent people to kill him. Do you think they will succeed?" The man chuckled, "Whether they succeed or not is not important. What's important is that as long as we delay the eldest brother's pace, or at least let him reduce his energy, then when the time comes, won't we still suffer a crushing defeat?" The 2 men nodded in agreement. "Delay him and let him urgently take over the 3 armies. When the time comes, the spies hidden in the army will continue to leak information to the Southern Sung Army. He won't have time to take care of it, or even if he knows, it will be too late to reverse the situation. Master's plan is so meticulous. He will definitely take down the 2 princes in one fell swoop. However, recently, the Prince of Nansang has been secretly investigating our identities." One of the eunuchs said, "Keep your hands and feet clean. When you meet with the Southern Sung Army, do not reveal your identities." The man narrowed his eyes and warned, "This subordinate understands. You may leave." "Yes." After the eunuchs left, the man slowly turned around, revealing his beautiful face. His pale cheeks gave people a sense of sickly beauty. This person was none other than Xiao Ho. The smile in his eyes was faint, but the murderous intent was strong. This time, he wanted Xiao Su to die on the battlefield, and Xiao Ran to lose his reputation. Then, he would slowly nibble away at the fruits of his victory. Chapter 878. There's an ambush. At that time, Xiao Su's voice fell, and everyone immediately gathered together and flashed their weapons. At the same time, a large group of black-clothed men suddenly appeared in the forest. They held iron chains in their hands and flew over from all directions. Without saying a word, they attacked Xiao Su's group. Xiao Lai's cavalry did not need Xiao Su's order and raised their weapons to meet the assassins. The killing began in the blink of an eye. In the dusky evening, the sky was still clear, but a bloody and cruel battle unfolded in the mountains. Their attacks were fast, accurate, and ruthless. It was clear that the other side was a top assassin. Blood sprayed like a mist, and there were no shouts, only the sound of weapons clashing and the sound of injuries. It could be said that this was a silent battle. Xiao Su stood in the middle of the crowd, coldly glancing at the black-clothed men charging at them. At this time, 3 to 5 black-clothed men attacked him. He held his sword in one hand and the wind under his feet. 1 against 5, he met them without batting an eyelid. His speed was so fast that before they could react, they had already been hit by his sword. Before they could feel the pain, they had already fallen to the ground. The man with thick eyebrows who was standing in the shadows had been observing the situation below. Originally, he didn't feel nervous, but when he saw that the assassin he had carefully trained was killed in one move, and with only one move, he couldn't help but stare at Xiao Su. As expected of the war god of Sichuan, the thick-browed man gnashed his teeth and glared. When Xiao Su mercilessly killed another 3 people, he could no longer stand still. He pulled out the spear on his back and flew up, stabbing at Xiao Su's back. At this time, Chu Qingyan's group was resting several li away. Because they could not get too close to Xiao Su's group, the group fed the horses and rested, while Su Yi led the group to the village to buy dry food. We will eat casually later and not light a fire. We will continue on our way, Chu Qingyan said to the group. She knew Big Ice Cube and knew that he wouldn't stop to rest at this time, so she didn't want to pull the distance between them too far. After a reasonable rest, she chose to continue forward. Cheng Yenluo and Jean Xian had no objections. Cheng Yenluo walked over and handed her a bottle of water. She sighed with emotion. I've traveled far before, but I've never been in such a hurry. You martial artists really have bodies made of iron. It's as if you'll never get tired. Chu Qingyan's gaze landed on the 2 dark circles under Cheng Yenluo's eyes. Cheng Yenluo's face was comparable to a national treasure. Cheng Yenluo, who usually paid attention to her work and rest, had suffered a lot along the way. She smiled and said, "We're used to it. This is nothing. But you, on the other hand, have made me see you in a different light by persevering for so long. You make it sound like I'm so weak that I can't even stand a gust of wind. In any case, I'm someone who has lived under the eyes of wild beasts for the sake of gathering herbs, okay? In terms of patience and courage, he's not bad either, okay?" Cheng Yenluo immediately retorted unwillingly. She didn't want to be looked down upon. Most importantly, she didn't want to drag everyone down because of her. Yes, yes, yes. Great physician Cheng, you're the best. You're the best in the world. Chu Qingyan smiled, revealing her neat white teeth. Just now, I thought you were going to run away. Cheng Yenluo glared at her in annoyance. She didn't want to talk to her anymore. At this moment, Shuji came back on his horse. Chu Qingyan saw him coming back alone from afar. His hands were empty. She leaned against a tree trunk and raised her eyebrows. "Why are you back so soon? Where's Su Yi?" Shuji hurriedly dismounted from his horse and ran to her in the blink of an eye. "Master, something happened. Just now, this subordinate and Su Yi went to the village in front. Before we arrived, we heard fighting sounds. When we got closer, we saw Huling and the others being besieged. There were too many killers, so Su Yi asked me to come back and report first. He's going to wait and see." His words made Chu Qingyan straighten her back in an instant. She quickly asked, "What about His Highness?" "His Highness isn't with Huling and the others. I think Huling brought a small group of people to the village. By the way, when this subordinate came back, I saw a group of people in black at the foot of the mountain not far away. I came back in a hurry and didn't have time to check. I don't know if His Highness is there." Chu Qingyan pursed her lips. She looked worried, but she still forced herself to calm down. "How many killers are there with Huling?" "At least 20 or 30. Huling only brought 4 or 5 people with him. Xiuji thought for a moment. Just by listening to this number, it was obvious that the other side was coming aggressively. Needless to say, Big Ice Cube was also in a killing situation. Chu Qingyan made a prompt decision. Xiuji, you take a group of people to support Huling. Jin Xian, you take the rest of the people and come with me. We're going to find His Highness. Xiuji and Jin Xian immediately responded. Without waiting for an explanation, they jumped on their horses. Chu Qingyan and Cheng Yanluo immediately got on their horses and rushed forward. Since they were here, they must have sent all their elite killers. Big Ice Cube might be in danger. She had to get there as soon as possible. The wind whistled, mixed with the clear sound of a spear piercing through the air. Xiao Su's eyebrows twitched. He turned around and blocked the sharp spear with his sword. The man with thick eyebrows frowned. He was about to use his strength, but he was bounced back by the force of his wrist. The man with thick eyebrows somersaulted in the air and landed steadily. Not long after, he once again took the initiative to rush towards Xiao Su. He wielded the long spear with ease, and his moves were very fast. Stabbing, flicking, and pressing, his strength was very sufficient. The profoundness of the spear lay in its flexibility and versatility, as well as its ability to suppress thousands of caddies. The opponent's internal force was strong. After a few moves, Xiao Su noticed it. During the fight, he could not help but seriously examine the opponent. This group of killers did not cover their faces. They openly showed their faces as if they were not afraid of being recognized. Their faces were rough, their bodies were strong, and their martial arts were strong. So, although their martial arts were not as good as Xiao Lai's, they were strong and could withstand a beating. The man with thick eyebrows in front of him was steady. Although his moves were changeable, he could basically figure it out after a round of fighting. It was just that fighting with him consumed a lot of physical strength. Were you sent by Pang Huang? After the sword and spear separated, Xiao Su said lightly. The man with thick eyebrows was stunned. He did not expect that Xiao Su would be able to guess his identity. But, when he remembered Xiao Su's reputation, he was not surprised. The King of England has good eyesight. He took a step forward and was about to make another move, but then he remembered His Highness the Crown Prince's order and stopped. The man with thick eyebrows sneered. It's better to cut the Gordian knot. He waved his hand and the killers with iron chains immediately surrounded him. The King of England, this chain formation was specially created for you. It would be a pity if you don't try it. Xiao Su glanced at these people. His eyes flashed with a dark light. At this time, the sound of horse hooves came from afar. The man with thick eyebrows frowned. Reinforcements? Xiao Su also heard the sound. He suddenly felt something and turned around. He saw a familiar figure standing proudly on the back of the horse. His left hand held a bow and his right hand pulled the bowstring. His red clothes were whiter than snow and his black hair was flying. Chapter 879. The moment Xiao Su saw who it was, he was stunned. Why was this little guy here? Chu Qingyan heaved a sigh of relief as she looked at the ice cube that was surrounded by layers of ice. Although it was stained with blood, it seemed to belong to someone else. She turned to look at the man with thick eyebrows and pointed the arrow in her hand at him. To catch bandits, first catch the ringleader. She still understood this principle. Don't act rashly. She stood on the horse and approached the crowd. When the man with thick eyebrows heard Chu Qingyan's words, he sneered, where did this brat come from? He's really overestimating himself. In his eyes, this Xishuan only had Xiao Su as an opponent. He did not even put Chu Qingyan in his eyes and directly ordered his subordinates in the chain formation, take down Xiao Su. As soon as his voice fell, the sound of something piercing through the air was heard. The man with thick eyebrows saw a white light flying towards him from the corner of his eye. He immediately dodged, but the arrow brushed past his shoulder and pierced into the tree behind him. If he had not dodged quickly, it would have pierced his chest. He looked up in surprise at the person he did not put in his eyes just now. Her red clothes were fluttering. At this moment, she had drawn her bow again, but there was not only one arrow on the string, but 3. The man with thick eyebrows narrowed his eyes, and a trace of contempt flashed past his eyes. Although the arrow just now had stunned him, to shoot 3 arrows at the same time without a certain level of ability would only be a joke. There was no lethality at all. Just as he looked over, the 3 arrows had already left the bowstring and were flying towards him. They were aimed at his head, shoulder, and chest, all of which were vital points. Her imposing manner was even more overbearing than before. Her speed was very fast, and in the blink of an eye, she was in front of him. The man with thick eyebrows immediately raised his spear to block, but he did not expect that although the youth did not look strong, every arrow seemed to carry 1,000 pounds of force. The hand holding the spear shook, and his arm went numb. He could not dodge the last arrow. Pfff, a mist of blood spurted out. The arrow pierced his shoulder, and blood dyed it red. The man with thick eyebrows couldn't care less about the pain. He only felt at a loss. He had actually been tricked by a brat. He looked at her in disbelief, only to see her looking at him coldly, as if she was looking at a dead person. The man with thick eyebrows was shocked by the look in her eyes. She was young, but she had a maturity that did not match. One couldn't blame him for reacting this way. After all, the men of the southern Sichuan grew up on horseback. Riding a horse and shooting an arrow was nothing difficult for them. They had always thought that no one could surpass them in archery, let alone the weak Sichuan people. However, this person's archery skills were not inferior to their most powerful experts. The man with thick eyebrows forgot to react. Xiao Su was originally distracted by observing the two of them, but when he realized that the little fellow was not at a disadvantage, he turned his attention to the chain formation that was supposedly developed for him. Each iron chain was as thick as an arm. It looked very heavy, but in the hands of these assassins, they were able to use it with ease. They did not find it strenuous at all. They threw the iron chains at Xiao Su, wanting to trap him. Xiao Su held his sword and swam around freely. When the assassins saw this, they immediately changed their strategy. They threw one end of the iron chain to their partner, straightened it, and then threw it at Xiao Su, wanting to use this as a pretext to trap him. Xiao Su flew up, avoiding the iron chains. When he landed, he was already standing on top of the iron chain. The sword in his hand quickly swung at the nearest assassin. That assassin bent his body to dodge, flipping in midair. The iron chain loosened, and Xiao Su flew down from his face. Then, very quickly, the chain formation changed again. All the assassins suddenly ran around Xiao Su, and the iron chains in their hands circled around Xiao Su, wanting to take the opportunity to tie him up. On Chu Qingyan's side, when she drew her bow for the second time, Jin Xian and the others had already arrived. They drew their swords and joined the battle, helping Turan and the others to kill the enemies. Just now, their master had run too fast, and they could not catch up. At this time, she stared in the direction of the man with thick eyebrows, and a light flashed in her eyes. Later, you won't be able to escape so easily. She drew her bow twice in a row, but the man with thick eyebrows vigilantly dodged. Seeing that he had been unknowingly lured to the side and had no time to deal with the big ice cube, she narrowed her eyes in satisfaction. When she arrived just now, she saw the man with thick eyebrows fighting with the big ice cube. Although his martial arts were not as good as the big ice cube, if she wanted to fight with him, it would take a lot of effort, so she directly took over this person. The first 4 arrows made the man with thick eyebrows a lot more vigilant, but the next few arrows were not as powerful as before, and the direction of his aim was also off, so the man with thick eyebrows gradually let down his guard. He looked at Chu Qingyan provocatively. It seemed like he had overestimated this little brat. He did not have enough stamina and would not be able to achieve great things. Just now, he had compared him to the Crown Prince, but now it seemed that he did not even have the qualifications to be a target for the Crown Prince. Seeing the man with thick eyebrows relax, Chu Qingyan curled her lips. She did not know when, but her hands were filled with 3 arrows. She aimed and released. The man with thick eyebrows easily hit them down. When he was about to laugh at Chu Qingyan, he did not know when, but there was an arrow in front of his eyes. He subconsciously wanted to wave his spear, but his arm could not move. There was no chance for him to react at all. He could only watch as the arrow pierced his chest and then pierced his heart. The intense pain made the man with thick eyebrows weak. He knelt on one knee, and the spear in his hand was pressed against the ground, so that he would not fall to the ground. Blood flowed from his mouth. He stared at Chu Qingyan and spat out a sentence with great effort. Why? This question was filled with disbelief and helplessness. Chu Qingyan had already put away her bow and arrow. She took a step forward and sat back on the horse's back, comforting the obedient horse. When she heard his question, she looked at him and smiled. The first arrow was a warning, but you didn't listen. The second arrow was to intimidate you. However, the following arrows were a smokescreen to make you lower your guard. The last arrow was the fatal one. That's right, I know you still want to ask, why can't your hand move? When Chu Qingyan finished speaking, the man with thick eyebrows opened his eyes full of doubts. Chu Qingyan grinned like a mischievous youth. She played with the arrow in her hand and said slowly, since you are so sincere in wanting to know, then I will be merciful and tell you. The arrow in your shoulder was part of my plan. Every arrow that comes after that will drain the strength of your arm. Do you know that when an arm is injured and losing blood, it will cause muscle paralysis if you keep waving your arm around? Although it was easy to say, it was not easy to control the direction of each arrow, the strength of each arrow, and know what moves the opponent would use. When you ignored my first arrow, you began to walk into a dead end. I remember I reminded you. Don't act rashly. Chu Qingyan smiled sweetly, but the words she said were full of dominance. Chapter 880. When the thick-browed man heard her domineering words, he no longer felt arrogant. He never thought that this youth would be so scheming. The moment she saw him, she had already set up a trap. Wait a minute, how did she know how he would block it? The words were in his mouth, but his eyes quickly dimmed and he didn't ask. To be able to set up a trap in such a short time, this question was no longer a problem. It wasn't that the Sichuan didn't have any talents, it was just that he hadn't met one yet. Who are you? The thick-browed man's hoarse voice made Chu Qingyan raise her eyebrows. Chu Qingyan. The man with thick eyebrows repeated the 2 words in his mouth and sighed softly. He had to let the crown prince know about such a clever opponent. Unfortunately, he was all ready. If he hadn't underestimated his opponent, how could he have lost? He was the crown prince's bravest warrior. But many times, losing was this simple. It was just that when you thought it was simple, you let your guard down and even lost your life. Chu Qingyan looked at the person who was already dead on the ground. She rode her horse closer and a trace of admiration flashed through her eyes. If the thick-browed man didn't think too highly of himself, he wouldn't have lost so quickly. However, she always liked to solve things as quickly as possible, so she withdrew her gaze and looked at the chain formation. Because the 2 of them had already retreated far away from the chain formation and had only fought for a short time, no one noticed that the thick-browed man had died. At this time, Xiaosu had already seen through the chain formation's weakness, so he didn't have the patience to practice with them. The soft sword in his hand trembled and immediately emitted a silver light. He injected his internal strength into it and it cut through iron like it was mud. The chains broke with a hua-hua sound, and soon the chain formation was broken. The assassins couldn't help but retreat. Following that, Xiaosu's arrows closed in. In the blink of an eye, a large group of people fell. Holding the long sword in his hand, Xiaosu stood in the center. His black robes and silver mask covered his face. He was like an unsheathed ice, so no one dared to approach him. The mountain wind blew, and it was incomparably hot. Surrounding him was the cold silence of the Grim Reaper. It was unknown who shouted, but they discovered that their boss had died. Everyone's hearts were scattered, and they panicked. Although there were many people, they were quickly killed by the fire spirit Jean Xian, and the situation quickly became one-sided. After a while, only their people were left on the field. Huo Ling and the others began to clean up the battlefield and search for clues. Chu Qingyan originally intended to dismount and walk towards Xiaosu. However, when he saw Turin and the others surrounding the person who was reporting to him, he suddenly had a bad premonition. Therefore, he pulled the reins and planned to sneak away. However, the person who was listening to his subordinate's report seemed to have eyes on the back of his head. He asked in a low voice, "Where are you going?" Chu Qingyan felt a chill down her spine. She turned around silently, only to find that the person who spoke was not looking at her at all. However, Turin and the others were already looking at her. No matter what, their eyes were filled with schadenfreude. Xiaosu did not speak again. It was obvious that he wanted to wait for her to speak. She subconsciously swallowed a mouthful of water. "I'm not leaving. I'm just taking a stroll. If I don't see you later, you know the consequences." Xiaosu ignored her and continued to deal with the matter in front of him. Cheng Yanluo, who was at the side, saw Chu Qingyan's shoulders drooping because of these words. She could not help but click her tongue in wonder. This little girl was acting as if she was the most powerful person in the world, but now, she was beaten down with just a few words. Sure enough, there was always someone to subdue someone else. At this moment, her smiling eyes met with Ethereal, who was bandaging the wounds of the injured. The smile on her face froze. However, Ethereal seemed to be frightened by her appearance. If he was not busy dealing with the injured, he would have run over to question her. Cheng Yanluo rubbed her nose. "Why are you so surprised? I didn't come for you." She took the medicine box on her and walked to the other side to bandage the injured Shaolai cavalry. With so many people, how long would it take for him to get all of them? With Xiaosu's words just now, Chu Qingyan wanted to leave but did not dare to. She felt sullen, but in the end, she could only stay obediently. She flipped off her horse and stood beside it. She wanted to walk towards him, but after thinking about it, she stood there and looked at him from afar. Some people said that it was as if they had not seen each other for 3 years. They had not seen each other for 4 days, but she felt as if it had been several years. She unconsciously stroked the horse's head with one hand and then looked at him without blinking. She could hear their conversation from time to time. He was clearly standing there, looking the same as when he left a few days ago, just a little more travel-worn. However, she felt that the big ice block looked even better. Don't ask her. What could she see through the mask? It was not like she had the fiery eyes of truth. If she was annoyed by the questions, she might just reply. It mainly depended on her temperament. If Hua Xiaoli knew her answer, he would definitely laugh at her, saying that beauty was in the eye of the beholder. But she was willing. It was just that her beauty did not seem to care that she was at a loss here. However, she thought about it again. If he did not allow her to follow, why would she have the idea of following him on her own accord? The more she thought about it, the more confident she became. Her back also straightened. However, at this time, the crowd dispersed. Xiaosu swept his gaze across the battlefield with his hands behind his back. His gaze lingered on the thick-browed man's injuries for a moment before he retracted his gaze and turned to walk towards Chu Qingyan. Chu Qingyan was in the midst of self-hypnosis. When she saw him approaching from the corner of her eye, she immediately stood at attention. She looked like a soldier standing guard. Her eyes darted around, not daring to look at him. It's over. He's here to settle the score. This indifferent gaze, stern face, and powerful footsteps made Chu Qingyan not dare to breathe loudly. He was already close. Chu Qingyan could not withstand the pressure. She closed her eyes and said loudly, I just want to follow you. My legs are on my body. What can you do to me? Silence. Silence again. Even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Chu Qingyan felt strange. She slowly opened her eyes. There was no one in front of her. Master has left. The earth spirit pointed out the direction for her. Chu Qingyan looked in the direction he was pointing. She saw Big Ice slowly walking towards a stream not far away. She slapped her forehead. She had been gloriously ignored by the Big Ice Cube. Cheng Yanluo could not help but laugh. Little girl, if that thick-browed assassin saw you like this and realized that he was defeated by you, I'm afraid he would regret it so much. When she said this, everyone laughed. The smell of blood in the air seemed to have faded a little. Chu Qingyan lowered her head. She did not do it on purpose. It was just that every time she did something wrong, she would lose her confidence in front of Big Ice. Although she did not feel that she was wrong. She sighed softly. How could she appease Big Ice? It's urgent. Waiting online. Chapter 881. After dilly-dallying for a while, Chu Qingyan finally resigned herself to her fate and followed him. Before she even got close, she could already see a black figure standing on the horizon. The evening wind blew his clothes, and although he was stained with blood, he didn't look disheveled. Instead, he looked more elegant and beautiful, standing aloof from the world. Chu Qingyan sometimes thought, how could such a loyal person be speculated to want to usurp the throne? He was originally a person who didn't care about anything, but every time he had to step into the whirlpool of power and fight with those evil people. Thinking of this, she felt that it wasn't worth it for the Big Ice Cube, but more than that, she felt heartache and sadness. Why are you standing there like a fool? A cold voice sounded and Chu Qingyan turned around. When she looked over again, he had already bent down, rolled up his sleeves, scooped up some water and washed the blood stains on his hands. It must have splashed during the fight just now. Chu Qingyan originally didn't know if she should go forward, but when she heard this, she immediately went forward. She stood by his side and lowered her head to watch him wash his hands unhurriedly. After thinking for a while, she took out a handkerchief and handed it to him. Wipe it. Xiao Su raised his eyebrows and looked at her. Seeing her helpless appearance, he wanted to laugh in his heart, but he suppressed it and reached out to take the handkerchief and then wiped the water droplets on his hands. Seeing him expressionlessly take the handkerchief, Chu Qingyan's heart trembled, but her eyes couldn't help but fall on his hands. This was a pair of well-defined, slender and fair hands. Each finger was long and straight. If it was in the modern world, this pair of hands would be very suitable for playing the piano. It was so beautiful that with just one look, she couldn't bear to look away. At this moment, Xiao Su had already stood up. He didn't even look at her and ignored her once again as he turned to leave. This place was further away from Turin and the rest, so after being stunned for a while, Chu Qingyan immediately mustered up her courage to run in front of him and stop him. Big Ice Cube, if you have something to say, just say it. Don't keep it to yourself. It's so uncomfortable to look at it. If you want to hit or scold me, I'll accept it. Only then did Xiao Su's gaze fall on the person in front of him. He saw that her head was slightly lowered and her fingers were clasped in front of her. She subconsciously made circles and looked very apologetic. Why would I hit or scold you? Xiao Su said mildly. Chu Qingyan knew that he was deliberately pretending to be confused. She wanted to raise her head and glare at him, but she knew that at this time, it was necessary to show weakness. Therefore, she took a step forward and reached out to hug his arm. Half whining and half blaming herself, she said, okay, don't be angry with me. Don't be angry. Hearing her words, Xiao Su couldn't help but be amused. Was he that kind of person? However, his hardened heart almost softened when he saw her coquettish smile and her coquettishness. But when he thought of how she had secretly left Jiangnan and followed him here, the signs of softening disappeared once again. He pulled his arm out of her embrace and said with an indifferent expression, if you go back now, I'll let bygones be bygones. Chu Qingyan looked at him as if she was stuck. This was the first time he had been so cold to her since they came to Jiangnan. She had wanted to soften his heart, but at this moment, she suddenly felt bitter. She felt wronged. She had done so much just to be with him. She would share the joys and hardships. She didn't want him to only be happy with her and resist the disaster alone. Who knew if they could win this battle? It wasn't like children playing house. If they won, they wouldn't get hurt. If they lost, they wouldn't feel despair. She was really afraid that she would never see him again. But he actually gave her that attitude and didn't understand her at all. Who exactly did she come all the way here for? Seeing her accusing gaze and her gradually reddening eyes, Xiao Su's fingers curled slightly. In the end, he forced himself to ignore her grievances. After saying that, he brushed past her shoulder and left. I'll give you one night to think about it. Tomorrow morning, I'll send someone to send you back. At this time, he couldn't indulge her and could only harden his heart. Boo-hoo, she sobbed softly and tried her best to suppress her breathing, but it was as if the cold snow and rain had drilled into his heart. He pursed his lips. He had groomed her in the hope that one day, she would stand by his side and go through thick and thin with him. But when that day really came, he didn't want to see her follow him through the wind and fire. Because the person he cherished the most should be covered in silk and satin, with endless glory and wealth, and a peaceful and happy life. So, he hardened his heart for a moment. Perhaps he might make her sad, but in exchange for a lifetime of peace, he was willing. Boo-hoo, it was as if she was covering her mouth, but it leaked out. In the end, she gave up suppressing her emotions and finally cried out. If he had the chance to come back alive, he would come back and explain to her. If not, then he thought that she would live well. She was a lucky girl with a lot of worries around her. He wouldn't let her suffer. Boo-hoo, he knew that she was a strong and sensible girl. If not for his appearance, she wouldn't have been involved in this bloody storm. So he believed that she would work hard to live a happy and healthy life. However, after taking 2 steps forward, he couldn't go any further. The words he used to convince himself became light and weightless in her despair, as if she had been abandoned by everyone. He suddenly laughed at himself. He told himself that he couldn't be soft-hearted, so he said so many words to himself. But when she appeared, all his self-hypnosis was meaningless. He knew that the best thing for her was to keep her far away. But knowing it was one thing, and doing it was another. Because no one could resist the only warmth in this world. Xiao Su turned around and walked to the person who was crying. Her eyes were red like a rabbit's. Why are you crying so much? Many words lingered in his throat, but when he finally spoke, they turned into a soft murmur. Chu Qingyan was crying uncontrollably. She thought that he would never come back after leaving, so she tried to use crying to soften his heart. Who knew that it would turn out to be true? The more she cried, the more aggrieved she felt, and the more aggrieved she felt. Then, she was immersed in the sadness of not wanting her anymore. When she heard his voice, she was surprised, happy, and resentful. She said pitifully, "Because I'm made of water." When Xiao Su heard this, he was angry and amused. In the end, he sighed and reached out to pull her into his arms. You're already an adult, but you're crying just like that. Where's your shame? When Chu Qingyan heard his words, her tears flowed again. Hubby is going to run away. What's the use of being shameless? After saying this, she didn't wait for him to reply and said in a sobbing tone, "Didn't you not want me anymore? Why did you come back?" Xiao Su hugged her tightly and looked at her affectionately. Silly girl, I missed you. Chapter 882. All the grievances became unimportant because of the words "I miss you very much." She was so stunned that she forgot to cry. In front of her, the familiar scent surrounded her nose. His warm skin made her slowly soften her body. She reached out and hugged him back. Her voice was hoarse and her eyes were red as she whispered softly. I miss you very much too. What answered her was an even more forceful hug. Tears came out of her eyes again. This time, it was not because of sadness or grievances, but because of joy from the bottom of her heart. Although the big ice cube would occasionally say something that he did not think was sweet, but it was rare for him to express his emotions so directly. If you miss me, why are you willing to let me stay? At this moment, she grabbed the clothes behind his back and complained softly. Of course, she knew that he did not want her to suffer with him. But how could a person who had fallen into the pit of love be so rational? Xiaosu stroked her head gently. Her smooth hair was the softness that wrapped around his fingertips in the past. He had underestimated the taste of missing her. Although he did not want to think about it on the way here and made himself busy so that he did not think about her, as long as he stopped and was free, her face and her voice would flash in front of his eyes and appear in his ears. At this moment, let him lose to his own warmth. He did not answer her and asked instead, "Did you get someone to impersonate the people from Jiangnan?" Yes. She did not expect him to suddenly mention this matter. She coughed lightly and replied. You managed to fool the people I sent. You must have drugged them. Xiaosu continued. Yes. The big ice cube was indeed able to predict things. She replied unnaturally. If it wasn't for the ambush this time, you wouldn't have appeared. Instead, you would have waited until you were on the battlefield. Xiaosu seemed to have seen through her plan. His tone was much calmer than before. Yes. Her voice was so low that even mosquitoes could barely hear it. After answering, she didn't wait for him to ask again. She immediately lifted her head from his embrace and glared at him. I'm telling you, you don't have to persuade me. I won't go back. Hearing her words, Xiaosu's expression turned a little pale. He didn't leave, but that didn't mean he had changed his mind. He let go of her hand and took a step back. His eyes were stern as he said, I've made up my mind. Knowing that she wouldn't cry anymore, Xiaosu was prepared to leave for real this time. How could Chu Qingyan allow him to leave? She immediately went forward and burrowed into his embrace. What does your decision have to do with me? I won't listen, I won't listen, I won't listen. Seeing her shaking her head like a rattled drum while hugging him with all her might, his anger dissipated because of her naughty appearance. Your body is dirty. Don't rub it anymore. His tone was rather helpless. The sternness that he had put on earlier had vanished. Chu Qingyan snorted coldly. Just now, he had ignored her wishes and hugged her in his arms. Now, he was saying these words. What was he doing earlier? Only officials were allowed to set fires, but commoners were not allowed to light lamps. I won't listen. I want to. Not only do I want to rub it against you, I want to bite you. As she said that, she lifted her head and bit his chin hard. She was close to him and he wasn't guarded against her. He was suddenly bitten. Xiaosu felt the pain. Looking down, he saw her with her hands on her hips and smiling at him delightedly. Her bright and beautiful smile made his heart itch. His throat tightened. He put one hand on her shoulder and the other on her waist. His voice was hoarse as he said, Don't think about running away after being bitten. Chu Qingyan had the intention to do so, but she didn't expect that he had already caught her. It was too late to run. At this moment, she felt pain on her lips. Her eyes widened as she looked at the enlarged black eyes in front of her. That pair of grape-like black eyes were like a huge whirlpool, causing her to become absent-minded. And at this moment, Xiaosu was already on top of her lips and teeth. They hadn't seen each other for a few days and she missed him so much that it was like a disaster. He had only wanted to punish her, but in the end, it changed. It seemed like from a long time ago, he only wanted to see her try her best to please him in the prince's palace and live on. Or he wanted to see the prudent youth in Mao village reveal the innocence that a 10-year-old should have. But he didn't want to watch the play, but the person who was playing the chess piece, fell into the game. When he first noticed it, he could choose to leave. But time and time again, he was infected by her smile, her strength, her innocence, and her bravery and stopped in his tracks. Then, he couldn't pull himself away anymore. The moment his lips touched hers, he already couldn't resist that restless heart of his. It was like a person who had walked in the desert for many days and finally welcomed a good rain. Hard work, reluctance, longing, wanting to keep her, finally turned into a burning passion. Chu Qingyan wanted to push him away at first. After all, she still remembered that there were dozens of people on the other side. Those were people that she was familiar with, they weren't blocks of wood. But being entangled by him, or being engulfed by such a blazing flame, she could only sink with him in the end. Many times, one side took the initiative, but in the end, it didn't matter who took the initiative. It couldn't be distinguished. When they separated, Chu Qingyan remembered Yan Luo and the others. She immediately buried her face in his chest. This time, she really didn't have the face to see anyone. Xiao Su was satisfied, but unfortunately, his face was covered by the silver mask, so she couldn't see his expression at this time. She only felt that his eyes were astonishingly bright. At this moment, he felt the person in his arms tugging at his clothes. He couldn't help but lower his head. Chu Qingyan wanted to say something, but she saw the passion in his eyes that hadn't subsided. Her originally blushing face was once again covered by the sunset glow, and she forgot what she wanted to say. Perhaps he remembered that there were still subordinates around, so he only let go when he felt that she could stand steadily. Her strength had been sapped away by him, and she could barely stand with her weak legs. Fortunately, he still had a sense of propriety, and his clothes were still intact. But when she looked up, she realized that the two of them were standing under a tree at some point, and the tree happened to block their figures. Could it be that big ice cube had moved her position while carrying her? She was so engrossed in her feelings that she didn't realize it at all. However, she was really impressed that the big ice cube could still consider the direction when doing that thing. Both of them were calming the surging feelings in their bodies. Although they didn't speak, they didn't feel uncomfortable. At this moment, she remembered what she wanted to say just now. She raised her hand and poked his arm again. When he looked at her, she said slowly, "Hey, you can't be angry anymore. You can't let me go back." Xiao Su tidied her messy hair and looked at her with an unreadable expression. "What do you think?" His ambiguous words made it hard for her to guess what he meant. Chu Qingyan harumphed. She grabbed his clothes and said fiercely, "I don't care. Anyway, you've already taken advantage of me. You can't just turn your back on me." Unfortunately, the person in front of her was unmoved. Her face stiffened, and she thought that she could only throw out her last resort. She loosened her grip and helped him tidy his collar. She smiled coquettishly. "If you're willing, I'll follow you. You can have as much tofu as you want. Do you think I'm someone who can be bribed so easily?" Xiao Su glanced at her, patted her head, and then turned to leave without any reluctance. Chu Qingyan bit her sleeves and stomped her feet. She was already so thick-skinned, but why was Big Ice Cube still so stubborn? He really suffered a double loss. How thick-skinned was she?